Discord stuff.
Oh yeah, I will try and do something similar.
And I have to briefly drop our capture so that I can actually put the tweet out in my Discord without doxing everyone in my Discord. That's fun. Because that has happened before. This is...
I'll take a picture of my setup just so I can tweet it out to show people that we're fucking dead serious, you know.
7 minutes late. Yeah, I know, but like in fairness, neither of us were particularly ready to go at the time.
Yeah, well, forget the haters and losers.
That's right. Basically, I'm trying to make you all want it more by being late. That's how we're, you know. I'm negging my own audience now. Just like this terrible book that negged me into reading it. Fucking hell.
Yeah, terrible book. I'm sure.
Yeah. One of us has read the book. I was very clear in my tweet about at least one of us having read the book, and I think you might be able to guess which one it was and which one it wasn't.
It was him behind me.
Yeah. Here's the thing: heroes or villains? The answer may shock you. It's villains. I don't know how to break it to you. Yeah. God damn.
Well, is that the conclusion John Rentoul reached?
No, strangely no. They were like, actually, there's a lot of mitigating circumstances, including the fact he didn't get paid by Nursultan Nazarbayev to do PR for him. And I'm like, look, I'm going to be honest with you all. If I was getting hired by a guy who had a solid gold rotating statue of himself, I would expect to get paid a little bit for my services, you know?
Yeah. I'd be like, you got to distribute that wealth. Clearly, right. You can't just hoard it.
But obviously I would never work for Nursultan Nazarbayev. But yeah. Also, evening, everyone.
Can't believe you're trying to cancel him like that.
Cancelling Tony Blair simply for working with Nursultan Nazarbayev. It's gone too far.
Why? Yeah, exactly. Like, why do people just not appreciate that a man has got to bring home the bread for his hard-working family?
They do genuinely have a bit where they go, he's only made £4 million since leaving off. And I'm like, £4 million fucking pounds.
Well, I was going to say who the fuck said that, but yeah, John Rentoul. Okay, that's not true. Like, that is 100% bullshit.
It might not have been 4 million, but we'll get to that bit because I highlighted it because I was like, that seems wrong. And I know that Jack will know it's wrong. So...
Oh shit, you know what? I'm gonna just find my copy of Tariq Ali's The Extreme Centre, which I cited on when we did the Chris Clark book.
Yes.
Because that's got loads of good shit about
Okay, so while Jack's giving you a tour of his house, welcome everyone. I hope you're ready for this. So there's a problem with this book, which is that it's quite dry. And so the interesting bits are right at the start and right at the end. So we're gonna basically the start of it is just a description of New Labour as a fucking rat fucking operation, and the end of it is just like the Iraq War was fine, and anyone who says it's not fine is being ridiculous. So, but then the middle of it is just like weirdly praising Ed Balls a lot of the time. I don't really like that so much. I don't understand a political project that can think of Ed Balls of it as anything other than a clown of the highest order. So we're gonna dive deep. Not a book about Rentoul's victims, no. Sadly, Transylvania not mentioned once, or Wallachia mentioned once in this thing, sadly.
Yeah.
John has erased history by not mentioning his role as the Voivode of Wallachia, I'm afraid. He's also done a lot of skirting the truth in this, as we'll see, but...
I'm disappointed. I was hoping that this would be like a real chiller. I was thinking this would be like the spookiest fucking book review of the year, like an early Halloween present. But I guess not.
Yeah, the best part of this is the cast of characters that it mentions, because it mentions like all of our favourites. Of course, Tony Blair. Of course, Gordon Brown. But we get Andrew Adonis a lot. We get Ed Balls a lot. We get we get like all sorts of New Labour functionaries mentioned. It's fucking fantastic. Ed Miliband referred to quite a bit because of course he was an advisor to Gordon Brown, which is the capacity in which he was. And he's also mentioned as if, oh man, how did this weird loser beat his brother David Miliband? And I'm like, because he was a better person than David Miliband. Like,
do they mention like extraordinary rendition anywhere?
I don't think so, actually. Weirdly, they gloss over a lot of the civil liberties aspect of it. So we're gonna get into it. But basically, as I was explaining,
do they have those in like whatever century Transylvania civil liberties? Was Tepes big on them?
Vlad Tepes. Well, he was forced to be when the Ottomans showed up. A bit more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was forced to be more religiously tolerant.
Okay.
Well, we like that. That's what we're all about.
Yeah, the Turkish having a positive influence on the world, as you yourself do.
Yeah, I demonstrate regularly the value of having Turkish people in the conversation. But yeah,
Turkish influence.
How does Prescott factor into things? Okay, first of all, if you're going to ask questions, you need to use the ask a question. Wait, hold on. I need to actually set these things up properly because I forgot to do my job. Would you believe? Hold on, everyone. Give me 1 second. But yes, he is. John Prescott is mentioned, but mainly as like a negotiator between Gordon Brown and Tony Blair. So that we're going to get into the central ridiculous assumption of this entire thing pretty quickly. But I just want to point out that one of my favorite sentences in this entire thing. So he's explaining why Tony Blair lost his popularity, and he's explained it as familiarity in the Iraq operation bred contempt in the intro, in the prologue. And I'm like, I mean, to be honest with you, I get the feeling one of those things caused more of a problem than the other, considering how he was doing before the Iraq War. So that's just one of the funnier bits. Also, we instantly got into Lord Adonis content. They got advice from the top people. Lord Adonis gave them advice on how to write this book. So
this book has got plenty of baldness to go around.
Oh yeah, the baldness.
It doesn't skimp on the baldness. It doesn't overdo the hair.
No, absolutely not. And I do, in fairness, I do like the cover of the book. I'm gonna say one nice thing about the book, which I do like the cover of the book. It's just a shame about the content.
Stylish.
Yeah.
It's got a quote from Michael Gove on the back.
I thought you were going to say Michael John Gapes for a second. I was like, oh no, how?
No, but they do actually have two different people called Michael on the back, and that's it. So I don't know why they didn't get Michael Gapes. But according to Gove, the Blair government changed Britain radically, and the reverberations echo through all our current debates. Now is the perfect time to review those years, and this is the perfect guide. It's like a kind of tour guide through the annals of Blairism.
Yeah, and a lot of it will surprise you all to know, is just rat fucking and personal animosity. Quite a lot of it. And resentment.
That trademark Rentoul smoke. He won't stand for anything that could be defined as Blair hating, such as Roman Polanski's 2010 picture, The Ghostwriter, written by Blair's former friend Robert Harris, based on his own book, which Rentoul excoriated in his review as a Blair-hating movie.
Fucking hell. Incidentally, the prologue was written by John Davis, who is the co-author of this with Rentoul, equally credited on the cover, I think. And the prologue was written by him, and he ends it with, "We hope you enjoy it." And no, we did not. I did not enjoy it, but I enjoy doing this.
What? Is he like the writer? Do you think? Do he actually write it? And it's just like Rentoul's brand is just attached to it because it's so strong. Everyone's seen for example, Nosferatu: Phantom de Nacht from 1979, and they're just like this iconic character from history would really get this dry tome about how good Tony Blair is flying off the shelves.
It is a very dry tome. And also, do they mention Blair cucking Murdoch? No, strangely absent. They do mention Murdoch actually, and they say so. I posted a tweet about what the actual fuck as my note, and it was a specific passage about Murdoch that got me to react like that, because we'll see, but they describe Murdoch in a way that I find quite unfamiliar and strange. I've highlighted the actual sentence, but yeah, he said, "We hope you enjoy it," and I won't. And instantly I wrote the note yawn at the start of this, because he just begins with a list of how long prime ministers have been in office, which is obviously a very strong opening.
I hope you enjoy it, and your forward is just setting yourself up to fall. I hope that the people watching this stream don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
See, now we're gonna exceed their expectations unless we're really bad.
So I'm just gonna read like the first substantial sentence of this, and you'll see why I wrote citation needed. Blair bequeathed a significant. Sorry, go for it.
I was just gonna say, like, before we get started, maybe before we get into the actual book, I should just show people my display, because you can't see it that well behind me, unfortunately.
Everyone, Jack made a display for us. Let's have a look.
So this is like the contents of my famous Blair shelf that I have up in my room. So I have a number of books that are critical of or outright endorsements and hagiographies of the Blair years. So, for example, here you have a left-wing academic tome, New Labour, was the gain worth the continuing pain? Dr. Gay Johnson concludes, no, and you can see that describes New Labour as a heresy. You have the end of the party. Yeah, you have the end of the party. Meanwhile, by Andrew Rawnsley, which is a kind of like Tim Shipman style gossipy book that's like a fucking 1,000 pages long and doesn't like mention Corbyn anywhere. Like, you know, that's how it, you know, it really doesn't consider the left to be particularly relevant. But look, it's got all the like good Anthony Dancona endorsements and shit. Even to be fair, Peter Oborne liked it, although he is a conservative as well. Anyway, furthermore, just quickly run through these. You've got Broken Vows, a book by that cunt Tom Bauer, who wrote the hatchet job about Corbyn.
Oh my god!
That guy that had the Corbyn book had so many lies and smears in it that I'm certain that this one will as well. But you know what? That's fine, because I don't like Tony Blair. So actually, lies and smears are good. We're just shouting it out. If anybody wants to buy this book by my good friend Tom Bauer, which is incredibly cheap.
Despite what he said earlier, his good friend.
Yeah, got updated for the Chilcot inquiry. So look, it got even more anti-Blair goodness in there before. A similar length to The End of the Party by Andrew Rawnsley, but Andrew Rawnsley is a Blairite tosser. Tom Bauer is a tosser, but he's like a big conservative, I guess. He doesn't like Tony Blair.
That's good.
And yes, so I'm sure a lot of the stuff in that book is true. Furthermore, speaking of Peter Oborne, got Not the Chilcot Report, his book about Blair's handling of the Iraq War. Ooh. You've got this one, Bob Marshall Andrews, who was a backbench MP during the Blair years. He was in the Socialist Campaign Group, but then he is a bit weird, and he recently became a massive melt and joined the Lib Dems during the Corbyn years because he Brexit drove him mad.
F's in the chat for that one, I think.
Yeah, that's a big F. State We're In, boring economics book by Will Hutt. I mean, I'm sure somebody who knows about economics might say, "Oh, there's some good stuff in there. It's quite influential." But yeah, big Blairite, Will Hutton. The Blair Years by Alistair Campbell. Like, I think
this is referenced a lot in this book, actually. So
yeah. This is the inside track. You know, this is the look at how like fucking Blair's cum face there. Like, he's exalted.
Blair's watching them bombs drop in Iraq. Like, that's it. That's what I wanted.
This is a heavy fucking academic tome. The length of this absolutely puts any of the other books to shame. Tiny text for about 800 pages. And this one is about how Blair kept an iron grip on the Labour Party. You know, during the Corbyn years, we'd of course hear how Corbyn had jettisoned party democracy, and it was a culture of stitch-ups, and it's quite funny now, isn't it, now that the real bastions of democracy and the Labour Party are back in power. But yeah, this book is basically how he did it, how he kept an iron grip on the party. Just two more to go. Owen Jones' book, Chavs, about how chosen obviously because Owen Jones is a massive Blairite. No, I'm just kidding. It chosen because Owen Jones wrote it during the Blair years as a critique of the demeaning attitudes to the working class that were thriving in the culture at that time. Final one. Richard Power Said's 1997, The Future That Never Happened. Really good book that looks at the kind of wider culture as Blair was elected in 1997. So you got two top geezers on the cover there. Mr. Blair and somebody who, perhaps an even more influential figure on the world stage, and would probably do a private gig for some of the despots that Blair has advised for large sums of money, if money was a comparable sum.
Yeah, and if you guys heard loud footsteps, that's because the person in the room has just been walking by. Hi, she's looking at me like I'm mad. Okay, she's glared at me. Okay, she's off. All right, so we were off to a strong start. We've seen the bookshelf of shame, and I've upset my partner. So we're off to a very, very strong start. Let's go. What said she was walking by loudly. She's like, "What?" I
was like,
I don't think I've properly upset her. But yeah, for people saying that's a lot of but sure starts, don't worry. The opening sentence of this is but sure start, and I'm only slightly exaggerating. The opening serious sentence, obviously, like the first sentence of him describing Tony Blair as a colossus, and is a bit. I'm just not gonna deal with that.
It is. Hang on, where's the fucking book? Is John Rentoul's face when he wrote that just Tony Blair there? Like,
yeah.
Just thinking of the MacGruber sex scene. He's just like, I'm gonna go.
This stream is art. I don't know what.
It's outsider art.
Yeah. So I'm going to literally read the first serious sentence, which is Blair bequeathed a significant domestic legacy, including a settlement in Northern Ireland, revived public services, and a changed society. And I just put citation needed right there. I just slapped citation needed right on that. He does do citations in this book, but he didn't do it for the thing that was like the most contentious aspect of this.
So the other author first met John Rentoul at the first Mile End Group MEG political and government seminars at Queen Mary University in London. The Mile End Institute is the place that was gonna host that Mike Gapes in conversation with Mike Gapes event when he was like for Change UK foreign policy spokesman. And I bulk bought tickets, but then they kept postponing it and then they cancelled it. I don't know why, Gapes just being mercurial. He was like, "No, I demanded semi-skimmed milk and full skimmed milk on my rider." But whatever kind of a prima donna diva Gapes was being, they cancelled that shit. I think he said, I needed to be in Parliament to vote, but he just happened to. Yeah, I think he was just worried. He'd seen that I'd bulk bought all those tickets and thought that the delegation of trolls was going to show up.
They didn't take out the brown M&Ms, and therefore he was very upset by that. That's my theory.
It was Professor Tim Bale was going to interview him, and there's this great tweet from Tom Manning, which was like, me when I see that Mike Gapes is doing an in conversation event with Professor of Being a Melt Tim Bale at the Milk End Institute, and it was attached was this gif of just this guy really excitedly jumping on a bus.
Okay, all right. So here's a sentence where they basically just said what they're upset about. Really, yet he will always be associated with his decision to join U.S. President George W. Bush in the 2003 invasion of Iraq.
Damn right.
I'm not going to read out my entire note, but basically, there might be a reason for him being remembered for that primarily, and not for Sure Start, which is that Sure Start doesn't really exist anymore, but those Iraqis are still dead.
Yeah, the reason is that he didn't manage to kill quite enough people that all of them forgot about what he'd done. Yeah, unfortunately for him.
Also, here's some more too right stuff. Although he won 3 elections in a row for Labour, 2 of them by huge margins, he was disowned by many in his own party, and the term Blairite became an insult of choice, which is hell yes.
Yeah,
completely in favour of that. people. I know that Blairite is a slur, as a thing that people genuinely, like, in the melt sphere want to believe, but I intend it as a slur. I want to be very clear.
No, I do, yeah.
Like,
I mean, that's the thing. Like, people always say that over the last few years, the most unreconstructed Blairites. Now, in the Starmer era, they've started, like, working back in that they actually do like Tony Blair. They've started gently teasing, like, oh, but I actually do think he was really good. But for the most part, like, they don't call themselves Blairites anymore. And so that's why it is funny just when somebody is just, like, obviously a Blairite, but they would, like, say, oh, I'm a Democrat socialist or something. It is good just to call them a fucking Blairite.
Yeah.
And yeah, when I say it, it does mean, like, being a cunt.
The official definition, that's the shirt in the making. Blairite definition shirts is coming soon. That might actually, because I've already got, like, one piece of thing that they haven't taken down that has a swear word on it, so I might as well push the boat out and see if they'll ban me for using cunt on it. So
I swear we always swear on these streams.
We do, but it's also very America-brained moderation, so I'm a little bit like, every time we swear, I'm just like, oh no, are we going to get done by the...
I'm really sorry, but I had absolutely no idea that I wasn't supposed to be swearing. Like, every time on this stream, I've just been effing and blinding. Like, there's no tomorrow.
Also, here's another comment that needed a citation. It was criticised in unprecedented fashion from its first days for the way it governed. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Like, that's true to an extent. Like, I mean, some people who would kind of, like, push the conversation in a Blairy direction, like Marxism today, like, the minute they actually saw the fucking Blair-style government in action, they were like, oh, fuck, this is awful. So there was a backlash that started pretty quickly. But, I mean, yeah, that was, I guess, not universal amongst, like, the establishment.
We're going to get into who is and isn't the establishment, and who is and isn't anti-establishment later, because there's some hot takes on that. And
so I guess Jeremy Corbyn is the establishment, and Tony Blair is an anti-establishment
They only really mention Corbyn like 3 times. They only mention him to be like, oh, even Jeremy Corbyn praised his domestic legacy in 2017. I'm like, yes, because he was the only person defending his fucking domestic legacy at that point. Like,
yeah, because he was trying to argue that it was not, in fact, spending money on schools and hospitals that had caused the global financial crisis.
Oh, we're going to get to that, because they pretty much just say, yeah, Gordon Brown fucked it. He ruined everything.
Oh, right, yeah. So like... this is what, like, so we were talking about with the Leftover guys on our show. By the way, I was just listening to their latest episode. I was touched when our own producer, Sarah, referred to those of us at the Reel Politik podcast as those white guys. But I was listening to that, and wait, what? Hang on, I've had a complete, like, mind blank. What you
were talking about? What Leftover was saying?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay, so it wasn't on their latest episode. I just wanted to mention those white guys thing because I thought it was funny. But
it was
like, well, thank you. Well, I'm sure Sarah will appreciate that. But anyway, yeah, so when they were on our show, we were, like, reading this Rentoul article that was, like, kind of critical of Keir Starmer. It was like the honeymoon, we were saying the honeymoon period is over. All these people who've been bigging up Starmer's leadership and now, like, turning on him, especially the right-wingers, for whom nobody who isn't Tony Blair will ever be enough. And then, yeah, so we were reading this Rentoul piece, and I was, like, saying, just straight off without guessing, like, so is it criticizing Keir Starmer from the right? And then, yeah, the substance of it was all basically just, like, his critique of Starmer's so-called policy bonanza that was, like, 3 really piecemeal things, was just like, oh, yeah, he's just gonna fucking spend money and then the global economy is gonna crash again. It's just like, yeah, it's just, like, the most, like, coalition brain shit, you know?
And in speaking of coalition brain, that's really a good segue into the core assumption of this book that they make for the narrative, which is that they treat the Blair government as if it was a coalition between the Blairites and the Brownites, and that they had massive differences.
these two drastically disparate political ideologies, like with such marked ideological divides, such as I like this one guy and I like this other guy.
Just in the chat, I want you to guess how many policy differences they name in this entire thing. Like, in the entire book, I counted how many policy differences between Blairites and Brownites they put up.
Go on, chat.
Okay, 2? I mean, you're in the right area, certainly.
Should I guess as well?
Because go ahead, you guess, because you haven't read it.
Throwing him under
the bus, sorry.
I just want to say, like, the reason that I've got all these, like, this massive pile of books here, which I probably will not fucking touch throughout the rest of this stream, is to compensate for the fact that I have not read the actual book that we're supposed to be talking about today. This is just to make me look like, I'm more intelligent, like I'm an expert. I've got all these books, some of which I also haven't read.
How many policy differences?
What have
okay
guesses?
Neil, so one of you in the chat has guessed this correctly. It was one. There was one policy difference articulated in the entire thing.
What was it?
We're gonna come to it because I highlighted it. But
was it Iraq?
It wasn't Iraq because they said like, oh, he in private had reservations, but he didn't fucking do anything about it. And I'm like, that doesn't count as a policy difference. I'm sorry.
Was it like? Oh, it was privatization.
It was foundation hospitals, if I recall correctly, where they had apparently had a big falling out. That was literally the only one.
Yeah, that was part of the whole. Yeah, they did differ slightly over attitude to the involvement of the private sector in public services.
That was pretty much it. Privatization was a good guess. That's pretty much... Basically, they described Brown's position as deliberately placing himself slightly to the left of Blair, which would still make him extremely right-wing.
Exactly. It's all relative. Like, they were both pro-privatization, but one was a bit more.
Also, Ed Balls gets a mention because he's mentioned as a very important person in this book. So they're pulling out all the stars, and they close their assessment with Iraq, which is of course the best chapter of this entire thing, let's be honest. And you can get a sense of how fucking pompous this shit is, because the titles of each subsection are like Blair's place in the pantheon of prime ministers, and I'm just like, fucking hell, man. And they actually mention another warmonger who ruined his party because of a dipshit intervention in the Middle East, David Lloyd George, who, of course, destroyed the Liberal Party because he intended to occupy Turkey indefinitely, a thing that was very successful as a policy and definitely did not go wrong. Which, famously successful British occupation of the Dardanelles Straits in Istanbul, which continues to this day, of course, because Britain is so good at imperialism. Turns out no. So, yeah, he got fucking owned by that. They also compare him to Winston Churchill, who, incidentally, also an epic failure in the Middle East. Some really great combinations here.
Epic failure, bro.
Yeah.
Blair totally got pooned.
Yeah.
By Taliban. You got pooned by the Taliban.
Imagine getting owned by the Taliban.
I'm sure there are Call of Duty games where you can get pooned by the Taliban.
Oh, it's Counter-Strike, where you get killed by the Taliban.
Okay.
Yeah. I've definitely been taken out by the brave Mujahideen fighters before on Counter-Strike.
Are there any games where you get to play as the Taliban?
I think Counter-Strike you do get to do that, don't you?
Nice.
British PM destroyed with facts and logic, that's right.
Is that just in the 80s though? Because obviously Taliban in the 80s when fighting Russia, cool, in the late 70s. Taliban in the 2000s when fighting Britain and America, not cool.
Okay, yeah. They also compare him to Clement Attlee because of course they do. And they say Clement Attlee had a troubled legacy of withdrawals from Palestine and India. And I'm like, there might have been more troubled legacies related to Attlee, who can say? They decline to expand.
Troubled legacy withdrawal. I mean, yeah, that's a bit kind of flattening out of a Palestine thing into and the India thing. Both these issues of partition into a really weird it was just the way that we left too early, you know. we should have stayed longer, kept our benevolent empire going, but because obviously, what are these countries going to do? Govern themselves?
Also, FFF almost made me choke on my drink there with that comment. Is there a 9/11 flight simulator game? What the fuck?
Yeah, probably. That's the kind of thing someone would make.
That definitely is.
That's the kind of thing FFF would make. I don't know if he's a games developer, but I'm surprised he's not just promoting his new line of video games there.
The Reel Politik video game line. There's also they mentioned like Harold Wilson as Prime Minister, saying like, oh, he had paranoia about security service plots against him, which of course were later corroborated. Like that was true.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Harold Wilson. No, I don't want to get in the game of picking favorite left-wing figures outside of the hard left of the party. I was going to say Harold Wilson's.
And of course, they both sides it on Thatcher. They're like, Thatcher, she made Britain governable, but she also destroyed the social fabric. So who can say whether she was good or bad? And I can say she's bad. Sorry, like
I'm just going to say, if I was a soft left nerd who was embarrassed about loving Tony Blair, I would be a big Harold Wilson fan, I think.
Yeah.
Because he won 4 elections, Blair won 3. He was a big reformer in many ways, but not really like a radical figure, more of a technocratic one. But I'm not a soft left nerd.
Yeah, he did the technocracy and he did it reasonably well.
Yeah, my favourite Labour Prime Minister is obviously Jeremy Corbyn.
That's right.
But
brief period from 2017 to 2018 where he basically was the Prime Minister.
Yeah, he's still Prime Minister in my heart, of course. And Tony Benn, number 2, another person who, Prime Minister, but only in my heart. But and of course, massive critical support for Harold Wilson in his struggle against the JFK conspiracy, so the JFK style conspiracy. I don't know, maybe it was the same people as the JFK conspiracy. The the fucking New Orleans homosexual underworld. But no, that's not. That's just who did it in the JFK film. But obviously he did actually was considered by the deep state, if you will, to the deep state, as Mike Gapes might say, to pose a genuine threat to the establishment. I haven't heard shit about security services plots against Tony Blair. I have heard fuck all.
The only plot was to embed him in power against that radical David Cameron. Yeah. That was it.
Yeah. Security service plots for Tony Blair, sure.
Okay, so there's again, they make this assertion. Blair's victory allowed him and Brown to make and embed change. Unfortunately, the only change they embedded was the Thatcherite change, which is, bad, actually, as we've established already. They keep coming back, they keep insisting that he did a lot of change. And the one thing where they, actually mention a decent amount of change that he embedded was in Northern Ireland. In fact, here's the first time they talk about Corbyn. And so this is about what Blair did in Northern Ireland. His leadership was a demonstration of true statesmanship, globally acknowledged, so much so that even Jeremy Corbyn noted the achievement in 2017, though he would not credit Blair by name, which, by the way, is just great pettiness. That,
Blair hating Jeremy Corbyn. No, I mean, the thing is that Corbyn did always say, and John McDonnell always said. In fact, John McDonnell had this pretty sickening line. I thought not to make my first mention of McDonnell being a critical one, but that is what I'm gonna do. He was like, "Oh, I hope Tony Blair is remembered for the Northern Irish peace process rather than the Iraq War." And and maybe he phrased it more like it's a tragedy that he will be remembered for the butchery that overshadowed that previous achievement. But Corbyn always did emphasize what an achievement the Good Friday Agreement was, where people who were Irish nationalists and people who were unionists were brought together.
The North and the South brought together, even, you might say.
Put together in the same factory and mixed together, and it came out as peace.
That's right.
Which is more than you can say for most of what Tony Blair did. Not that he was like solely responsible or anything, but obviously it did happen under his government, so credit where credit's due. Jeremy Corbyn always said that, and then people were just like, oh, what? So Jeremy Corbyn said, it was wonderful that we managed to, bring people from both sides of the aisle into the debate as legitimate political actors. And then people were just like, wait a second, you support Irish nationalism. Like, hey, you are not a legitimate political actor because you support Irish nationalism. It's like, it wasn't the idea that you could do that, but not be violent. I guess Jeremy
Didn't we establish a political path for that? Isn't that the whole...
Yeah, no, Jeremy Corbyn has just killed too many people, I'm afraid. It's just, he just never stopped doing those bombings. The Warrington bombing, for example, that people like David Aronovich have highlighted his involvement.
Anyway, moving swiftly on. I did make my note here, which was that this is written in the tone as if Jeremy Corbyn wasn't particularly interested in Ireland, which of course we know is complete horse shit. And then there's this whole thing where they go, oh, they invested in the NHS. And it's like, yeah, how did that turn out? Of course, that meant that there could be no disinvestment in the NHS at all, and there was no privatisation. It was all fine. Gloss over it,
Yeah, but that quote earlier about they transformed society, it's like, what, into the society that David Cameron inherited and then built on?
Yeah, and also they mentioned the 2012 Olympics ceremony here about how awesome the NHS was. I never even watched that properly at the time. I was just like...
No, I never did. I was in Amsterdam when it happened, and I was smoking bare weed, and I did not fucking cast 1 second's thought to it. But I know it's become obviously iconic now for people who...
I'm trying to think about what I was doing. I was playing video games, I think. I was much cooler. You see, I was playing video games. I went to Amsterdam a couple of years later.
Well, yeah. No, I was also in Amsterdam when Margaret Thatcher died.
Oh, you hate to see it. Well,
I'm from Surrey. I went with some of my friends from school, and they did not understand why I was so happy when. I say I'm from Surrey. I'm from London originally, but these are people I went to secondary school with. And not that they're flaming reactionaries or anything necessarily. Although this particular friend did come from a Tory family, but they were just like, "Oh, why are you so happy?" Because I was like dancing in the street.
There's also this bit where they start talking about foreign affairs and how good it was that they intervened in Kosovo. Which, if we cast our minds to friends of the stream, Sean Duncan's video, where he talks about how even that intervention was a bit of a shit show, and they would choose targets based on... my computer has just told me I'm meant to be doing the stream. That's strange, because I'm already doing it. Thanks, laptop, for being 45 minutes late. But the thing is, they would choose fucking targets based on the press they would receive for the targets that they picked. So... Is my laptop from Tom Usher? Yes. Thank you, Tom, for the laptop. Don't blame your lateness on your laptop. No, I blame it on Jack.
If it's from Tom, your laptop was fucking later than I was. And if the laptop was from Tom Usher, it would have like a bunch of gear like secreted somewhere in it, whoa. Okay, it's just why is there white powder pouring out of this fucking computer?
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
That's not a diss on Tom Usher, who I like very much.
That's just Tom Usher being really fucking cool, which
he's a cool guy. Yeah, exactly. It's like his brand.
How would you describe Tony Blair? How Iraq happened from Tony Blair's perspective? Would you say it was forced on him in any way, or he was enthusiastic? Would you say Jack?
I would say quite the opposite. I would say it was not forced on Tony Blair. He very much forced it through various channels himself, be they the United Nations, Britain's own politics,
Yeah, so here's how they describe the choice. They say, the choice was imposed upon him. when, like, later in the book, they will describe him calling not Bill Clinton, but calling George W. Bush up and being like, "Go to war immediately, you motherfucker! I want to do this war." They do mention Bill Clinton a lot in this book.
God has told me that we need to go to war.
Yeah, and also not supporting the US would have upended the UK-US special relationship, to which I say, so fucking what, man?
Yeah, so well, that's a big deal for these guys like Renters.
Yeah.
You know, like, think about it. Like, most vampire movies are made by Hollywood, and that's in the United States. John Rentoul very much needs that legend kept alive.
So here's the thing: they describe his continued involvement in world affairs after his resignation. So especially in trying to build a state for the Palestinians as envoy of the quartet, and in trying to improve governance in Africa. Notably not mentioning his freelance work in Central Asia at all. Nothing about that, you know.
Trying to build statehood for the Palestinians. Yeah. Every fucking source from the Israeli side or the Palestinian side said of Blair's role trying to negotiate peace between Israel and Palestine that he just did nothing. He was the most ineffective fucking person. Like, zero links in the fucking region. Like, well, the region is in that specific part of the Middle East. He's got plenty of links to, like, you know, fucking
Saudi Arabia and
petro dictators. Yeah, but you know, yeah, exactly. He was absolutely like the most shiftless fucking person. Just like this, like, paper job, just like so that these people from the political establishment can like keep like raking it in and keep relevant after leaving office. Like, literally trying to secure what's the phrase again, Sinan?
Oh, sorry. It said trying to build a state for the Palestinians and in trying to improve governance in Africa.
Yeah, you know, governments. I'm sure the governance in Africa thing is fucking bullshit too, but sorry. So, again, I just remembered the you know, try and moderate the swearing thing. My bad. But
can't do it all in a row.
But yeah, exactly. Yeah, gotta space it out. It's like on FX, they're allowed one fuck per season.
That's right.
Not counting. I don't mean sex, which they can have sex as long as at multiple points in the season, so long as no one's naked. But yeah, like. The like establishing Palestinian statehood, like yeah, that's right. Tony Blair is the best fucking friend that Palestinians ever had. That's why things improved over there so notably during his tenure as Middle East peace envoy.
That's right. And the thing is, like, if you wanted to bring in a person to bring peace, I don't know why you'd bring in, like, the biggest warmonger in the history of the region since Genghis Khan. Like, Genghis Khan showed up and had a lower body count than Tony Blair. Like, come on.
Well, that's it, because they don't want to, like, bring in someone who'll bring peace. They just want, you know, it's jobs for the boys. They just want a fucking, you know, a man who has been proven to serve the interests of the establishment to just occupy this, like, paper position.
Yeah. Okay. So. Blair left office with an attack on the media, which he described as a feral beast tearing people and reputations to bits. And I mean, to be fair, he did that all himself. He's done that himself at this point. And hi to Teo in the chat. What's up? He's more or less done that himself.
He became more forgiving by the time he published his memoir, A Journey, which I have also read. No, sorry, I listened to the audiobook. That's why I don't have it here. But so yeah, just think about how much time I spent with Tony Blair's voice just in my ears, right? So he mentions in that book, just like what he always does is he emphasizes how much he personally likes like these widely reviled establishment figures. Be they, he'll say, people in the Labour Party were always very sniffy about the royal family, thought they were a bit outdated and outmoded, but I always had a great fondness for the Queen, and I found our chats together wonderful. Prince Andrew and I had great nights out on the town with our friends Kevin Spacey and Gillette. regardless of that insinuation, like, one of the other things he does is he emphasizes how much he personally likes Rupert Murdoch and just thinks he's a smashing bloke and they get on really well. Gordon Brown, in his memoir, which is like the most fucking boring book I've ever read, does the same thing about Benjamin Netanyahu. He's like, I consider him a friend. Our political focus is just different. It's like his political focus is on like genocide, basically, whereas Gordon Brown's is just on like a particular kind of neoliberalism with imperial dimensions.
Gordon Brown just wants to sell gold. He wants to become one of those YouTubers who pans for gold and ends up disappointed when they don't make their money back. Yes, I've got into a new type of YouTube guy. Thanks to this stream.
Do you reckon like Matt from... No, this is like too far out an idea for Matt, but like during the height of the Gordon Brown sold all the gold shit, like, do you reckon like some Tory cartoonist did a thing where like Gordon Brown was like an old-timey prospector and he's like out there like, oh Lord, I'm mining, like Tom Waits in that Coen Brothers film. He's like, oh, I won't do a Tom Waits voice.
Maybe best not to. But,
oh Lord, I'm mining for some gold. Where is the gold? Oh no, I sold it all.
See, that would be funny. That's why that can't have existed. Gordon Brown is the best PM we've had in 40 years, which is grim. Yeah, and the second best was arguably is the dipshit war criminal we're reading about now. So
yeah. It's an interesting debate, isn't it? Yeah. I guess I have to say that's the case.
Yeah, it's well, like, it doesn't have to be a close second, or second doesn't have to be good.
Yeah. No, we haven't had.
Oh, actually, I missed the Corbyn mention, which was Blair's conscious retreat from the domestic arena lasted until the leftward shift of Labour under Corbyn in 2015, and even more so the referendum vote in 2016. Weird how that roused him from his slumber and brought him to life.
Yeah, no, Blair could always be roused from his slumber when something particularly outrageous happened, such as not long after Blair left office, there was a global financial crisis, you may have recalled, and Gordon Brown, obviously despite Brown having caused the global financial crisis by spending money on schools and hospitals, Sure Start centres, and not wanting quite as much privatisation as Tony Blair, Gordon Brown raised the top rate of tax to 50p as a measure to address the crisis. Tony Blair briefed the media that this was the end of New Labour and a catastrophic mistake.
Yeah. Okay, so there's just a whole lot of stuff here about... They're basically just crying about why Tony Blair isn't liked. And they even blame journalists. Journalists also continued the campaign against Iraq war at a high pitch because the war was bad. Rare case where the journalists were essentially correct.
Well, not all of them. You know, there's some incredibly fucking obsequious video of Andrew Marr, or I think it's Andrew Marr, outside number 10 on the night of the ground invasion, just this is so good. Democracy has been brought to Iraq. And he's just fucking just foaming at the penis. It is the most disgusting display that you have ever seen from a journalist. Short of the thing in the Adam Curtis documentary where they're Britain and Hong Kong have a very special bond.
Oh my god,
genuine fondness for this.
Okay, if you want to hear our takes on that, you've got to listen to Leftover. Yeah, that's where we talked about that. But yeah, I had thoughts about that. I was that really wow, because only the British could demand to be thanked as they leave a colonial possession.
Actually, in terms of these books I've got, there's some good stuff about the handover of Hong Kong in this one, because that happened right at the start of the Blair era, and it went off relatively well, I thought. Although Blair's dickhead officials were being, as Adam Curtis relays, they were well, how about we'll hand you back China. Just make sure we'll hand you back. Yeah, the Britain controlled China at that point.
Yes,
you may have forgotten.
Famously.
we will hand you back Hong Kong, China, but you must instate democracy.
What democracy, man?
Retain democracy. Yeah, which everyone was like, "What democracy?"
Hong Kong, famously a liberal democracy under British colonial rule. Little known fact.
Yeah.
Again, we're really dropping the facts on you tonight.
Yeah, but that was like the same period as like the Kosovo intervention and the Good Friday Agreement, like early Blair, the Diana thing,
Right.
that kind of thing. Like that was when he was on a roll, pre-Iraq.
Yeah, so let's describe. We finally come to who is and who isn't the establishment. Let's get ready. Despite Blair's disdain for and refusal to join the establishment.
Refusal to join?
Yeah, and do you want to know how they define this? No seat in the House of Lords and no honours. Like,
the House of Lords, the most like genuinely powerful people in the country. Not that they don't have some kind of influence, but they're not apart from like real like people like Andrew Adonis who really have their finger on the pulse. Like the House of Lords is not usually it's like a combination of actual politicians and just like people who were given something nice and don't really know what to do with it.
Incidentally, as soon as the Northern Independence Party gets some seats, I will take a peerage. No, I won't. I wouldn't, obviously. But like, I'm just looking forward to that Hartlepool by-election because that's going to be fun. Okay, so the Corbyn movement was built on a story, constantly repeating itself on social media about him as a member of the elite, a conservative, a neoliberal in scare quotes, and which makes me think that they think neoliberalism doesn't exist, which, like. Yeah,
more out of purpose.
Yeah, I mean, look,
praise neoliberalism.
I mean, look, a neoliberal in Labour clothing, and above all, as a warmonger. And there's a reason these things picked up on social media. It's because they're fucking true. Like, what did the guy do that wasn't conservative? Like, what's tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime, if not conservative populism, as a slogan summed up? Like,
yeah. No, he was extremely populist.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm not doing the thing where I call everything I dislike a populist, because I would probably identify quite strongly as being in that general area of politics anyway. But like, they're basically upset that basically the thing that's actually upset them here is that Blair's unpopularity. They think Blair's unpopularity led to Corbynism, whereas it's the conditions that Blair imposed on the country and that he allowed David Cameron to impose on the country that probably led to it. So they're like,
and Brexit.
And, well, that too. Somehow that. But, like, yeah, they're just upset about that more than anything else, and they're just kind of deflecting it to, no, it's because they think he's a warmonger, which, yes, being against the war does help, because it implies that you had reasonably sound judgment. In fact, we're going to get to their position that, no, we can't judge, we could never have known at the time that there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Then how the fuck did so many fucking people figure that out? I don't know. Yeah. You know, like...
They'd watched The Rock the night before, and so the intel directly pulled from that movie just seemed extra familiar.
Yeah. But, okay, so I love this chapter. What is good government anyway? And there's a whole thing here where they're like, man, isn't it a shock that anything gets done at all in the British government? And I'm like, yes, but doesn't that imply it's kind of a shit system? Like, I don't know.
No, that's populism, bro. Like, you can't say that the system doesn't work because you're just, the same as Nigel Farage.
Okay, I'm going to read this second shock, because the second shock is going to... Alright, I want everyone to be sitting down when they hear this. The second shock is that it has been generally accepted over the years, though not recently, in brackets, that British government has in many ways been the envy of the world. It is almost singularly uncorrupt.
What?
Excuse
me? What?
Now you see why I told you all to sit down.
I flicked to a random bit in this book and there was a fucking bit about the Cash for Honours scandal.
Citation needed. You must cite your sources if you're going to say that. I'm sorry.
One of the multiple scandals that happened during the Blair era.
The
Although, I mean, I'd say
major years had huge scandals. Like, it was non-stop scandals.
Yeah, I mean, it was mostly like people who should not be having sex with anyone having sex with each other. But yes, yeah,
John
you're
Major
right.
did get pegged, of course, famously. Unfortunate that I had to say that on stream, but there we are.
Yeah, well, you've all seen Tebbit's cum face, thanks to Geraint. Now, you know, after that, it was an act of solidarity after the IRA's terrible actions that John Major let the world see his.
Wow.
Which, just in case it looked a little bit like that, possibly.
Fucking hell. There's a whole thing here that just is about civil servants being extremely competent and good, which I'm not really going to get into. Yeah. I just happen to know a lot of civil servants, and
lies and steers.
I'll leave that to if there are any of my friends who are civil servants watching this. I don't mean you. I mean your colleagues, of course, not you. You're very competent. A lot of the criticism of Blair seems to have been a demand for an ahistorical perfection is one of the things they drop. I'm like, no, the demand is don't bomb fucking countries and don't do neoliberalism. Those are not fucking difficult bars to clear. Like,
yeah, just leave out the neoliberalism and the warmongering. Guys.
Yeah, which would leave you with basically nothing that Blair did. But
yeah, exactly. Sure start. Wait, I'm sure, like, if you got someone on who's, like, really clever and theory-minded, like, they'd be like, oh, actually, here's why Sure Start was actually also neoliberal. I'm not capable of making that argument.
Oh, I'm certain we could find
I bet that it's true.
You know what? I'm going to at John after this stream and be like, John, tell me how Sure Start is neoliberal. Make him do his PhD in his downtime.
Like, yeah, I don't know. And obviously, like, Blair and corruption are like fucking bywords, as Tom Bauer wrote in this book.
How does Rentoul define? This is a problem. Like, they don't define anything that would be useful for me to have defined, which makes this a really annoying book. It's a really annoying book. Hold on, let me. Also, they're describing. They describe the Blair government as leading a government that delivered as best it could for the contradictory demands of the electorate.
Delivered asbestos.
I'm like,
homes.
How contradictory was this electorate if they gave them 2 fucking landslides? I mean, that implies that they were quite okay with much as certain members of my family might be regretting their 1997 vote now. We won't be getting to, I won't be naming and shaming tonight. Unless they are in the chat, then I will name and shame them as a defensive measure before they own me and leave. And here's what they hope from this book. Our hope is that time will eventually see Blair's reputation in some way repaired. I've got bad news. Guys, not gonna happen.
Didn't his approval rating, like, actually go up slightly due to, like, Remainer melts? Being like, oh, Tony Blair's good now. It doesn't matter that he did Iraq. Like, I don't know if you saw that little worm, Dorian Linsky, talking about bald worm, talking about how, oh, no, we didn't have Tony Blair on our podcast that is the artist formerly known as Remainiacs. So we didn't have him on our thing to talk about Iraq. We had him on to talk about Brexit, which is fine. Like, Blair, like, a load of dipshits like that have just been like, oh, because Blair says, like, some, like, smart sounding shit about fucking, like, like, oh, Brexit is going to damage the economy. He's actually like a wise prophet again and can be forgiven for all his crimes. And so it did get to the point where, like, Blair, who was the most hated person around, like, he was the... Did I cut out there?
No. There was a very funny thing that I just remembered, which was the what they called the People's Vote campaign had an internal poll leak where they found that Tony Blair was less popular among Remainers than Jeremy Corbyn, which was quite funny, and they just all reacted super negatively to that.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure when that was, because I'm pretty sure Blair's approval rating eventually was above Corbyn's, like that of Jeffrey Epstein. You know, because of
no connection implied.
Operation.
Okay, right. So there is, speaking of low bars, it is our contention that Blair's new Labour government was one of the better administrations to have held office in the UK. And I have, my note here is that is a very low bar. The bar is literally in hell, if that's what we're saying. Well, at least it wasn't the fucking government that fucked up the Suez Crisis, which incidentally, Suez Crisis 2 currently ongoing still.
But that was Harold Wilson, wasn't it?
No.
No, wait. No, sorry.
That
was Atlee. Yeah, no, my bad. Yeah, okay. I was blanked there.
But yeah, okay, so the first actual chapter of this book is called The Blair-Brown Coalition. So they're going to keep coming back to this idea. And this first bit, just Suez Crisis, was Anthony Eden. There you go. So yeah, one question that keeps recurring as we studied the new Labour government was, should Tony Blair have allowed Gordon Brown so much power? And I'm just sort of dumbfounded by this fucking ridiculous stuff about, like, they keep expecting us to treat Blairites and Brownites as if there's this huge fucking gulf between them. My guess is the gulf between Blair and Brown is about the gulf between me and Jack. There is probably not that much of a fucking substantial difference going on between them.
Yeah. It's like the difference, not even the difference between our ratings of the Owen Jones book.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it's less difference than that. Like, but I just love the idea that the problem with the Blair government was that there wasn't enough Blair. If only it had stayed true to the way of the Blair, then it would have all gone fine, and he'd be remembered as a legend.
I would simply have had more Blair. That's it. I've solved governance, everyone. We can all go home. I've resolved the problem.
Yeah.
We got Andrew Adonis mentioned again.
Bald.
Yeah, and I didn't know this, that Andrew Adonis was one of Labour's negotiators in the talks with the Lib Dems after the 2010 election. And he was the one who specifically pointed them to the coalition analogy. Because they're like, well, aren't you guys like the Conservatives and Lib Dems? Which I suppose in terms of policy, yes. But, other than that, I'm not sure what they think the similarity is here.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, we're getting a lot of bald action on this one. This was... Okay. This was a division between institutionally and ideologically distinct parties, the Blairites and the Brownites. I mean... Fucking hell, man. Like, so you will all know that there was one policy difference explained in this book. The rest of it is just people going, oh, if Gordon Brown takes over, we'll lose the next election over and over again, which, by the way, just shows how deep the rat fucking poison is in this party. Yeah, in fact, I love this sentence. This sentence is just fantastic because it's just so much personal drama. The Brown faction finally moved against Blair in the coup of September 2006, when a junior minister, Tom Watson, and a number of ministerial aides resigned.
Tom Watson. Yeah, that was cool when Tom Watson fucked over Blair in the same way he fucks over every single Labour leader.
Yeah, the man has talent. I'll give him that.
That's so grim that he just resigned from Parliament when he could have stayed and just been a tosser to Starmer.
Yeah, come on.
No, he wouldn't have. No, it's great that Tom Watson stepped down. Obviously,
it's a massive improvement in the quality of the PLP from complete horse shit to it's not that bad. It's still terrible. In fact, it may have got worse. Net worse as time's gone on. But yeah, but basically this entire section is just personal animosity and they're like, oh, but it's different from the Lib Dems because David Cameron couldn't have sacked Nick Clegg. And I'm like, yeah, this fucking yes, but that doesn't mean they're the same or similar in structure. They basically just go into oh, some people liked Blair more and some people like Brown more, and they got into really big personal spats with each other. It's that's not policy difference. That's people getting mad at each other on basically the equivalent 2000s equivalent of getting mad online. Like
that is this book. There's just so much like he said this and then he said that, and then Brown threw his photocopier at Chris Leslie's head, like something like that.
Yeah, Anyway, I won't approve or disapprove of that. So there's a great thing here, which is the modernizers, shorthand for the ruthlessly electoralist tendency, which my note here is, well, not anymore. They have no capacity for it because they've just been consumed by this culture of rat fucking that is just described in great detail here.
Like, ruthlessly anti-electoralist. They will lose. They will just lose and lose as long as they're beating the left on their own terms.
In fact, the development of the strand of thinking and its body of supporters can be traced through the battle against Tony Benn. First mention for Tony Benn, incidentally, and the hard left. Damn, I wonder who they are.
The hard left. Who are they?
Which sought to gain control of the party after the defeat of 1979, but which was held at bay in the deputy leadership contest. We all know the history here, I would assume, but I'll read it all out anyway. Held at bay in the deputy leadership contest in 1981. The momentum turned after Labour's humiliating defeat in 83. Mandelson's appointment, so they're talking about Peter Mandelson being brought in as Director of Communications. Appointment 2 years later was crucial in organising a new leadership cadre able to take the party beyond Neil Kinnock's brave reformism and John Smith's moderate Labourism. Incidentally, they didn't mention how Mandelson did in the 2 elections where he was Director of Communications. I'll give you a clue. He lost.
Yeah.
He lost both. He is as much of a fucking loser as Jeremy Corbyn, to be clear.
Wait, which 2 elections were they?
87, 92.
Okay, right, yeah. So I was wondering if he reassumed that job later on in his career. He was not actually Neil Kinnock's Director of Communications in 1992, which Blair disciples have often said was one of the reasons that Kinnock lost by a small margin in 92. Mandelson had decided to go into Parliament in 92. So for a while, we actually had Peter Mandelson MP.
Oh, man. Oh, yeah, they go into that. They mentioned that he had to resign from the front bench several times. That's mentioned. They never really go into why, though.
No scandal in British public life. Uniquely uncorrupt country.
Yeah. But also, like, they act like it was illegitimate for the hard left to... Yeah, he made up his L record with 2010, that's right. So he is as much of a fucking loser. In fact, he's a worse fucking loser net than he ever was. But...
Yeah.
But yeah, they act like the hard left, whatever. I'm not going to specify who the hard left are. It might be us, who can say? But
they're not in ascendancy within the Labour Party anymore.
But the thing here is they're like, it's so illegitimate for these hard leftists to try and be powerful within the party. Well, then what the fuck do you want them to do? I guess we'll do shitposting parties then, and just do that. Just like, we'll have 638 different shitposting parties running across Great Britain specifically to fuck over the Labour Party. That's the dream. Like,
that is the rule, isn't it? Like the Blair supremacy, as the old book behind me says. Like, that's all fine. But if the Corbynites try and, like, say, get one MP selected who might support Jeremy Corbyn, then, Stalin has landed. The tanks are rolling in.
I just enjoy how your centrist voice is always gapes, and mine is always like a weedier kiss.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I mean, I kind of do an extremely whiny, annoying nerd voice as well. That's just my own voice now. For centrist too, but like Gapes is just like the thing is, but he is like the personification of the centrist mania. Towards like Russia and Stalin and the hard left and Putin, jumbling all these concepts together into some great bogeyman. And I feel like nobody kind of expresses just the way that you just kind of say Russia to them, and a switch will be flipped. Like, he'll just be, how Gapes always posts these pictures of him like having a nice stroll through Bohemian Grove or whatever. There's all these owls around him, but it's like through Ilford Park, and he's just walking through there, like having a good old time, and like then somebody, he'll just think of Russia, and just like his smile will just turn upside down. He'll just be like, "Those bastards! They will pay for what they have done to me." It's like a meme I posted once. So it's like, so I saw this article in Stereogum about a band called Angelic Milk, and so it's like,
oh yes,
new album by Angelic Milk. And I did the picture then, the famous picture of Gapes smiling, looking really jolly.
Yeah.
And then the little bit under it was like, the Russian band returns with a new single. And then, of course, I posted the picture of Gapes angry, beetroot red, waving his fist around. That's like the centrist reaction to Russia. You know, they can be just delighted.
So here's how the authors describe the gap between Blair and Brown. Although the gap was invisible to the naked eye...
The gape,
excuse me. Although the gape was invisible to the naked eye, the psychological and physical distance between Brown and Blair grew between 1992 and 1994. Which, like... What the fuck? Like, if they're saying, like, it's invisible to the naked eye, maybe it doesn't fucking exist. Like, I don't know. They're putting a lot of work in to try and convince me that these two incredibly similar people are very different. I just don't get it. Like, I genuinely struggle to understand what they're trying to convince me of here.
Yeah. Swindlers and thieves. They swindled me out of my money. I ordered this book. It didn't arrive until the day we were supposed to be talking about it. And now I'm just holding this book. As if I have some kind of use for it. I'm just clutching it.
Jack is trying to prove he had good intentions, which he did. It was no one's fault. Well, Amazon's fault, I think.
No, my intentions were pure evil.
Yes, of course. As always on the stream, our intentions are only bad. So... So basically they trace the split to the leadership election, and they literally describe it as a personal trauma from the leadership election, which doesn't tell me that it's ideological at all. It just tells me that Brown was a little bit upset that he didn't get to stand for Labour leader in 1994. Like... Personal
trauma. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at least he literally got to run unopposed in 2007. You can't say that for Tony Blair. He had to run against, like, two people who were never within a hair's whisker of beating him. Like, but fucking... Yeah, literally, Gordon Brown ran against nobody. Like, John McDonnell... It was, like, classic socialist campaign group. John McDonnell and Michael Meacher were just like, no... I'm the best man for the job. But then, like, literally neither of them even had much of a chance of getting on the ballot, let alone with two left-wing candidates.
It's incredibly funny how the one time they decide to shelve the I'm the best candidate thing, like, between them, it actually went quite well.
Who knows?
Who knows how that works, eh?
Michael Meacher was obviously like the candidate of 9/11 truth.
Yeah,
I don't know if he was like talking about it at the rallies, like about his belief that George W. Bush did 9/11, but he was like talking about that elsewhere. So I think it would be really funny if, like, in 2007, Labour had a leader who was literally like coming out with zeitgeist documentary talking points.
God, it's like conspiracy YouTube, but like 10 years early.
Exactly.
So yeah, here's the thing. Here's a description of how much difference they thought was between each other. In the first case, Brown was determined to assert his control of policy, even to the extent Blair thought of creating differences between them when there were none, according to Campbell in his diary. Now, Alistair Campbell is not a reliable narrator, but I believe he can at least accurately discern the distance between Tony Blair and Gordon Brown.
Like... no, he's very reliable. When Alistair Campbell tells you that, say, weapons of mass destruction exist, then you know that his word is bond.
Yeah, that's right. There's just an entire section where, like, it is just personal psychodrama where they're talking about each other's, like, psychological flaws. Basically, like, Gordon Brown was too indecisive and too, you know, they just go on about each other's psychological flaws. They talk about, like, how upset some of their staff were at each other because they would just be dicks to each other all the time. Which, like, yes, if you're being dicks to people all the time, you might upset some people. I don't know.
Or Ed Miliband was nicknamed the emissary from Planet Fuck because he was the only fucking, like, person from Gordon Brown's team who could communicate with the Blairite cucks. Because, like, Brown's team were all just, like, vicious thugs like Ian Austin, just like horrible, despicable people who just in every like second of their lives were like, fuck you, shut the fuck up, fuck off. Like that was just basically, apparently like Ed Balls, like they were all like that. That's what I've heard. Anyway, that's what all these books say.
I've heard the same thing, incidentally.
But because Ed Miliband is more of a cuck. Like, you know, he's more like in the Blairite mold. So he was able to like reach across this vast ideological divide, which seems to come down to you like a different person, have a slightly different attitude to privatization, and have a different attitude to how much profanity one should use.
Yeah, and incidentally, if Gordon Brown would like to hire someone who is extremely vulgar and a jackass for a living, Gordon Brown, please hire me. I need money. Come on. I'm a much more capable thug than Ian Austin. Let me tell you. Like I can actually. I don't look like I weigh 120 pounds wet. Like, you know. Like, come on.
I'm gonna like sign off this and get a call. It's like, I'm like, hello, like. This is Gordon. Like, hi, Mr. Brown. Wow, I didn't expect to hear from you. I was very impressed by when you said Blairism means being a cunt. Like, oh, thank you, Gordon.
You get performance on this stream, guys. You do.
Would you like a job with the Gordon Brown Institute for Change on a global level? Like, just all of them, all of these like ex-politicians have foundations that are like they're like some variation on the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change.
Yeah, and also Taylor Wright's making the point that this is so annoying, lib obsession with turning everything into a great man of history. Yes, this is literally that. There's no actual analysis of any of this. It's just like, well, they basically they privileged like personal sources that they know personally, literally. Like they're just like, well, I'm mates with Alistair Campbell, I'll just ask him what he thinks. That's literally the way this worked. And so a lot of the citations are literally like, I think Jack has Alistair Campbell's diaries there behind him even. Yeah, like half the citations are literally from that exact book. Like it couldn't have been
highlights.
Yeah, like couldn't have been more fortunate that he had it there. I genuinely didn't think he had it, and well, I got told, didn't I? But it's just personal psychodrama, and now we get to my favourite title. Well, actually, I have a lot of favourite titles.
Wait, sorry. There's like a list of characters in the book, who's who, in the back of this, which helpfully explains to you who Osama bin Laden is. Militant Islamist, founder of Al Qaeda. Brackets OBL. So just like if any of you were none the wiser as to who Osama bin Laden was, like, who is this guy?
Man, this Osama bin Laden guy is coming off really bad in this book.
Yeah.
Who is he?
He must have been a Brownite.
Yeah. Just something very funny about Brownite Osama bin Laden now, although I think he was an Arsenal fan, so lots of question marks about Osama bin Laden, let's just say that.
Yeah, well, so was Jeremy Corbyn. Like, coincidence? I think not.
Okay, so you will all be familiar with Nick Brown, no relation to Gordon Brown, the former chief whip several times of the Labour Party.
He's still chief whip.
He's still chief whip, in fact. So he's former and current. Basically, there was a personal suspicion from Blairites about Nick Brown, which is just incredible.
Wow, I wonder what it could be.
Yeah,
about Nick
like what was it about Nick Brown that did this? Sorry, Norwegian boat. My Discord is subscriber only because I'm poor, basically. And also, I don't want like a flood of random people who come into the stream to come into my Discord. But also, I do make exceptions if, like the person that just mentioned by Jack.
Cassidy just comes into your Discord like, extremely high-pitched screaming.
Oh no, you meant like this conversation here. No, yeah, this is just like a separate server from the from the Discord server. Yeah, sorry, this is a separate
meant
thing.
He's a hacker. He's gonna hack this with his tech skills.
If you would like to hack, you can chat to us. We're responsive to the chat usually. It's fine. I try my best to be responsive.
It's like the newest feature of his special glasses, but like see through women's clothes or whatever. They get into people's fucking.
This entire section is going to be a problem in the edit.
No, sorry, that was just how I remembered what the glasses were, but they were actually glasses that like made it. They made it easier to look at women without getting noticed. Is that right?
No, I think the glasses that we're thinking about made your vision blurry so that you wouldn't get like horny in public.
Oh, is that it? Okay,
that was the thing.
I just wanted to be on the record, that was a genuine mistake, and that I wanted to clarify what Oz Turgie's glasses actually were for. Because I believe in fairness and decency. Some of us still do. Some of us still believe when they go low, as Oz frequently does, we go high.
They talk about like the crowning so basically they talk about the whip's office as if it's like a Brownite operation through and through, which like again I'm telling you there's not much difference here.
And that is a bit like bad party management from Blair, to be honest. Like,
yeah, it's not ideal.
Your chief whip, like, come on, that's like this kind of thing. Well, Corbyn literally did.
Yeah, Norwegian boat. I'm not having anyone on the actual thing. I pre-arrange all these in advance, so like I don't like adding chaos to it. Sorry, man. You go hang out with other people who do that, call-ins and stuff, because yeah.
This is LBC.
Yeah, this is LBC. I might do an LBC style stream and just have like random people on and just have a massive fight.
Oi, Sinan! What about this great replacement theory, eh?
Maybe another time. I don't know. I kind of find it funny to just do this like as a thing. They make a point to just talk about every time Nick Brown gets sacked as chief whip, which is apparently quite often in the 2000s.
Oh, really?
Like, just we could do a fake LBC call-in with like fake voices, although that veers into some weird nerd territory. Fireflash. Just subscribing at tier 2. Thank you. I think you subscribed with Prime earlier, so thanks for the tier 2 sub as well. And you got the chugging gif, which is good.
Tiers 8. I guess they could call you Sir Tier Stasi.
Oh no.
as Ian Brown famously labelled the so-called leader of the Labour Party.
Yeah, Sinan is famously not a weird nerd, that's correct. We strictly anti-nerd position. They talk about like the fundraising. Basically, they raised funds in an unprecedented way, which is to say they went cap in hand to all of their rich mates and asked for donations. A reverse phone-in where I stream myself phoning into every phoning radio show I can find. Now that's an idea. All right. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. We'll figure out how to do that. There's basically me becoming a prank caller, which admittedly is very much on brand for me. Okay, yes, at last, something that isn't personal drama. Everyone, brace yourselves. Let's get ready for what it is. I think I already spoiled it, but for people who weren't here. However, it was not until the dispute over foundation hospitals in 2002 to 2003 that an ideological gap opened up in public between the two wings of the coalition. Also worth noting, in private too. In fairness, like, this is the first fucking difference that we could find. Like, the one policy difference here, and they're mostly unhappy that Alan Milburn resigned, is what I've understood from this. Which, like, who cares, man? Who gives a shit about Alan Milburn?
Titan.
Yeah.
The giant Alan Milburn.
They talk about him as like part of the core group or whatever they call. We'll get to that. I highlighted this because it's incredibly funny who's in the core group. Because there's like people who are obviously like actually core people, like Brown, Jack Straw, Blair, Alistair Campbell, like, makes sense. I don't like any of the fuckers, but, like, it makes fucking sense. John Prescott, who I kind of like, but, you know.
Alan Milburn, another corrupt cunt who went into the private healthcare sector after leaving office.
Yeah, and yeah, as someone pointed out in the chat, Blunkett, yes, Blunkett's in that. I did blank on Blunkett's name, to be honest, because he's such a... Basically, all of these people, to me, are just, like, centrist, racist melts. So, like, they all blur into one character, unless they have, like, some particular defining feature that I can note. So there's also a thing where Tony Blair was like, I'm gonna sack Gordon Brown, which, like, is just, again, personal drama. Like, and also they describe Mandelson, at this point a backbench MP again after 2 stints in the cabinet that ended in 2001, and they declined to mention why his stints ended.
You know, just because Britain is just an almost a uniquely uncorrupt country.
Yes, that's right. Famously uncorrupt country where, you know, we don't mention why anyone gets sacked or, well, yeah, I think he was made to resign or sacked or whatever the case may be. And then we get into, like, the first hints of Iraq policy. Basically, they blame Iraq for the rise of Gordon Brown, as if he wasn't obviously going to be the next leader of the fucking party. Like,
it was that Iraqi electoral interference.
But they genuinely think, like, the Iraq war changed the balance of power between the Blairites and the Brownites. It's like, well, I mean, it would, wouldn't it, if... 1, you lose a whole fucking bunch of seats, and 2, the guy is basically an unreformed war criminal. It would shift some people to the Brownite position. Oh no, Industrial Pet, we're way off the full chapter on Iraq. We're getting the preview of the Iraq shit. This is just the warm-up. We're way off the actual Iraq shit.
The thing about, like, the Iraq war is, like, obviously it is a crime regardless. It's a terrible thing. It should never have happened. But they didn't win. Like, that's they can never, like, put like this big patriotic spin on it. Like, same with the US with Vietnam and the US with Iraq. Like, it's just like they're just there. They're just still there. They can't leave. Nothing changes. Like, or when it does change, it's fucking horrible for the worse.
Also, FFF, at uni, some friends went to a Blunkett book signing and tried to get him to sign a copy of Mein Kampf. Fucking hell.
Oh my god.
But do not do that, obviously. Like, there's a line. Don't get people to sign copies of Mein Kampf.
Do you reckon he did it? There was this guy at my school who, like, I guess was somehow academically gifted because he kept winning the gifted and talented scheme. One of those weird things that they do in schools to, like, you know, the neoliberalization of education, like, set people against each other. But anyway, this guy fucking, like, would always get the Gifted and Talented award, and he'd go along and get his copy every single time of Mein Kampf. He'd always ask for Mein Kampf as his prize for it. It was like so because he wasn't a big reader or anything, so I guess he just did the same. Like, oh, I'm such an edgelord. I'm fucking getting Mein Kampf every single time. And I don't know if it was like signed by the head teacher or something, but I just think of like the head teacher just like signing. Oh right, another year. Better sign Matt's latest copy of Mein Kampf.
Wait, was he called Matt? There you go. We hold on, I've just lost my place in the book because I accidentally clicked one of the rare citations that they have. Sorry, give me a second.
Oh,
yeah. Okay, yeah. So basically, John Prescott took Brown. So basically, they talk about like the deal that was made between Blair and Brown about a departure date, where they're like, John Prescott takes Brown's side, where he's like, no, Tony agreed to fuck off because he completely fucked Iraq, and everyone was like really pissed off by like late 2003 with the decision. Pretty much by then, everyone had clocked on to what the problem was because it turned out there weren't any weapons of mass destruction, which was kind of a big deal. But yeah, John Prescott taking Brown's side basically John Prescott in this is just like a mediator between Blair and Brown. He's just constantly negotiating between them. The poor guy, like, all he wants to do is connect with the public in the form of punching them, and he has to sit and deal with this fucking nonsense from Blair and Brown all the time.
Physically connect with the public, be it with his penis or his hand.
Yeah, FFF talking about Peter Dow going left. Oh, my next YouTube video is about redemption arcs and why Britain can't have any, basically. We're uniquely cursed. We can't have redemption arcs here. There is no redemption for this island.
People just get worse.
Yeah.
Over here.
And, like, Peter Oborne is such a massive exception to the rule that, like, we have to discount him. Just, you know, we can't have it.
Yeah. Oborne is one of these guys, though, who I'll be like, I think on balance he's good, and then he'll just like say something where it's like, what? And you're like, oh, he is like kind of like a really old school conservative. It's kind of like I don't know. Every time I'm like, well, gotta dig what Glenn Greenwald is doing.
Yeah,
fearless, courageous journalism. He'll then just be like, he'll just like be like out there like trying to bait trans people for some reason. It's
my next book is a Peter Oborne book actually that I'm gonna be reviewing on the stream. So
is it the one I've got?
What one have you got? Because I think it's the Assault on Truth is the one that I'm doing. No, it's not that one. I mean, we could do that one, to be fair.
Yeah, that's very pertinent to today, obviously.
Yeah, maybe as a follow-up at some point we'll do that one as well. But yeah, to give you a clue about what the next book review is, it's going to be about Oborne's book.
Cool.
So that'll be fun.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy.
Yeah. And I'm going to give his book a very low rating. No, I probably won't. I'm very nice to people.
I'm following the chat now. I only just started looking at it, but now I see someone's like mentioning how strange Greenwald is, and I saw him like he went on a proper meltdown about like trans people or whatever, and then like 2 days later he was tweeting about how shit Keir Starmer is, and I was like, yeah, that's right, Glenn. Stick to the real issues.
Yeah, like keep dunking on Keith.
Yeah.
Incidentally, we're gonna have a big Keith Duncan stream next week, so I hope you're all excited for that one. We've got some big guests. However, Alright, so this is a whole thing about how much they hated fucking Gordon Brown, right? However, media speculation about Blair stepping aside in Brown's favour prompted Blair's cabinet allies to rally to him, urging him to stay on and warning that Brown as Prime Minister would be a disaster for the country. I just want to be clear, this is in 2004. This is not in, like, 2006, 2007. This is 2004 when this fucking happened, right? At least if I've understood the timeline here correct. Yeah, it was in 2004. And in June, John Reed, Alan Milburn, Charles Falconer, Tessa Jowell, and Peter Mandelson spoke to Blair in person, singly or in groups, and Patricia Hewitt wrote him a personal minute. Like, fucking hell, these people hated Brown so much, they were like, he's gonna fuck everything, you must not let him take over. And this was like when Brown was probably one of the most successful chancellors the country had, at least in popular interpretations of him. So yeah, give you an idea of how much of this is personal psychodrama. And then we have the return of Milburn for some fucking reason to run the 2005 election campaign. And the number one thing here that they mention is that he just didn't enjoy it. He didn't enjoy running the 2005 election campaign, which I'd hope not, because it must have been fucking terrible having to haul that criminal over the fucking line. Like, must have been one of the worst things that you've ever had to do as a job. And, and you're a Blairite health minister. And,
Blairite health minister, a really good job to have if you want to, like, get some links in the private health sector.
Yes, which we have, there are books about that. And there's just this big section here where they describe, like, basically because Blair's popular advantage was fading as we approached the 2005 election, Brown suddenly, Brown is suddenly a bit more powerful in the party, and they just talk about, like, the things that he achieved in the 2 years since, basically, the Iraq War. So he achieved a surprising amount, according to them. The sullen state of the Labour Party meant that reforms that needed legislation were difficult. The schools bill was watered down, and even then it could only be passed with the votes of the Conservatives. And, like, they passed the renewal of Trident, and they apparently improved pensions. They won the Olympics. They secured agreement on African aid and climate change, and to complete the settlement in Northern Ireland. To which I say, how much of that really mattered, and how much of that was retained in the long run? Question marks. Yeah. They're like, they achieved a surprising amount, but it was also surprisingly easy to undo, which perhaps implies that you maybe shouldn't waste 2 landslide wins to fuck around and do market reforms. And we come to this a bit later, but there's a whole fucking section of this book that's just like, giving the Bank of England independence, wasn't that a fucking marvelous achievement?
Oh yeah, great idea.
And it's like, I don't know, maybe it's technically correct, the best form of correct, but also it's not like...
it's not. I don't think.
I don't know. Like, I'm just offering the thought that, I don't know, maybe it's like mechanically something you do. I don't know. But like, it's not like a whole chapter's worth of book. And there's this whole thing, like the Brownite ascendancy, which is great. And when Brown became leader, I'm going to read something to you all. And you're going to tell me if this sounds familiar. And whether this happened again later. The Blairites copied the tactics of the Brownites with the resignations of junior ministers, Siobhan McDonough and David Cairns in September 2008. So, like, first of all, a character that some of us will be familiar with.
I didn't realise that Siobhan MP had been around for so long. I guess, like, yeah, she really, like, she really got in there early to stake her claim. It's like, no, I am the MP called Siobhan.
Yeah.
If your name is Siobhan, you cannot be an MP for I am the Siobhan MP. But anyway, she's just like one of these Blairite no-marks who you just saw like slagging off Corbyn in the media over the last few years. I had no idea that despite knowing she was a Blairite, I had no idea she was actually one from the Blair days. I thought she was just like Wes Streeting or something, some sad sack little suit.
Of course, Siobhan McDonough from the famous take, which was that anti-capitalism is anti-Semitism, which was a bit of a telling moment, if I had to be honest. But yeah, she did basically offer that take in public, so I feel more than confident saying that she said it. And basically, the Brown Party was weakening within... Basically, they're constantly insisting that I treat these as two separate parties, which I resent, because it's not true. But I'm gonna humour the ancient author of this text. And I'm so sorry, like, it's just a rat fucking chapter. Like, it's just people describing... It's just a paragraph describing people who resign because they didn't like Gordon Brown. So Hazel Bliss, Jackie Smith, James Pennell, and Caroline Flint just resigning for various reasons. And they said if they had acted together, they might have brought Brown down. And of course, we know that even when these clowns act together, they still don't quite manage it, do they? They're fucking useless, as a great or reasonably good man once said. And they were basically there was a plot to just bleed Brown dry, like, with resignations over a long period. And they realised that didn't actually work when you have, like, a functioning majority government and an entire section of the party that will actually just fill in the gaps as you go. Because, like, who the fuck cares if the junior minister in, like, the Home Office resigns? You can just get some other random no-mark to come in. You know?
Yeah. Well, that's why, like, fucking 50 of them had to do it, like, to spite Corbyn. I mean, it still didn't work.
Yeah,
people
but basically...
Just like, Bobson Dugnut? What?
But basically, there were, it was just rat fucking all the way down. Just all the way down. Like, this is an embedded culture. Like, a completely embedded culture in here. And it's wild. It's just absolutely wild.
Do you want to... Like, before we get onto the Iraq bit, which I feel like we should probably...
We're way off the Iraq bit as well, so yeah, we might make some progress here.
Jesus. So like, I just wanted to... So I wanted to say I've been doing a little bit of, like, independent research to back up something that I've always found really funny, which is the thing about John Rentoul slamming Roman Polanski's The Ghostwriter as a Blair-hating movie. And I've just, like, which, according to Geraint, is very much in the parlance of the Twitter account Blair supporter. But I'm just going through, like, these old, like, John Rentoul blog posts. So apparently, like, The Independent used to, like, have this blog called Independent Minds that was, like, powered by LiveJournal. And so I'm just, like, looking at John Rentoul's old LiveJournal right now. And at Indie Eagle Eye wrote, So this was John Rentoul himself blogging as the eagle eye of the independent website. He wrote this headline: Germans subsidize Blair-hating movie. So there you go. He did call it a Blair-hating movie. And he said, my friend Julie has seen the Blair-hating movie of the year, as she calls the ghostwriter, Roman Polanski's film of Robert Harris's book. And then he quotes Julie, whose blog is no longer on the internet, as saying, I can only advise all Blairites to give it a wide berth. However, the shortest... that must mean people who supported Claire Short's resignation from government. And the jihadists of that world will love it. Shortists and jihadists, like the two major threats to national security, like the ringleaders of Islamist insurgency, Osama bin Laden and Claire Short. Curiously, she says the Tony Blair character, Adam Lang, played by Pierce Brosnan, is shot at the end. In the book, it is a suicide bomb carried by a British man whose son was a soldier killed in Iraq and whose wife was killed in a London suicide bomb. Harris laid it thick. No, he's actually got the plot details of the ghostwriter there wrong. It is a suicide bomb carried by a British man whose son... No, sorry, he doesn't do a suicide... He shoots him, but it's not at the end. Then at the end, Ewan McGregor's character gets run over because he exposes the conspiracy, which is that the Cherie Blair character has like conspired with the CIA, her handlers, to like run Blair as a puppet for years and then eventually set him up. Anyway, what is really surprising though, Rentoul continues, I just think this whole saga that I'm relaying to you is so indicative of like Rentoul thought. What is really surprising, though, because like he's a pundit basically, but this is him getting investigative, is that Julie has discovered that the film was subsidized by the German taxpayer. It's not quite a oh my god Russia thing here, but Germany they probably support more public investment than John Rentoul is comfortable with. As she says, it appears irritating and ridiculous that the Republic of Germany subsidized a movie with €200,000 of taxpayers' money, which accuses a former British Prime Minister of war crimes. And then Rentoul throws in a little, I suppose, deserved shot at Polanski. A film directed by a man facing extradition to face sentence about a man whose guilt exists only in the minds of the haters. Like Blair's haters, man. The haters, the losers, the lies and the smears. And he concludes, irony, ye gods. And his tags are ban Blair baiting.
Oh my god.
And Iraq. So that would be quite an interesting find in itself. But actually, Rentoul had to publish a subsequent Independent Minds piece. Just a short piece here, a clarification. I was wrong about the ghost.
Oh,
correction. Yeah, so but he may have spread a little bit of fake news.
Oh.
2 months ago, I said that the ghost, Roman Polanski's film of Robert Harris's self-hating, Blair-hating book. Right. Tony Blair, aka Adam Lang, aka Pierce Brosnan, confronts his ghostwriter, Ewan McGregor, was subsidized by the German taxpayer to the tune of €200,000. I am grateful to John Rosenthal for pointing out that the real total from all German public sources is nearly €5 million. Oh shit!
Oh,
so
damn.
He actually understated like Germany's tentacles and how deep they were in this nefarious Polanski operation. Plus unspecified funding from the European Union through its media film fund. You, dear reader, have contributed to the making of this propaganda.
Hell
that's
yeah.
a terrible shame, John. And I suggest that what we should do to make sure this doesn't happen again is to leave the European Union so that our funds are no longer going to these works of Blair-hating propaganda.
Okay.
You can sign his petition to ban Blair baiting, Blair hating, Blair baiting, to ban Blair baiting. I don't think he's saying we can ban people from hating Tony Blair.
That's
okay? All right. Right. One more thing. There's one final piece he wrote on this movie to complete the saga. I'll skim through most of it, but he wrote this when the Chilcot inquiry was not coming out, because the Chilcot inquiry must have just been announced. Because Blair made an appearance at the Chilcot inquiry about 7 years before its findings were released. Anyway, Rentoul says, I've commented on the author Robert Harris's double standard here, unable to distinguish between someone who has admitted a crime and someone Harris thinks ought to be guilty of one. Apparently, what Blair did... this is the funny bit. Apparently, what Blair really did wrong in Harris's eyes, according to this interview in Frankfurter Rundschau, translated by Julie, so that's the same, weird Blairite blogger who he's citing in his previous post about this movie, was to fail to introduce the euro. That is actually another slight ideological divide between Blairites and Brownites, I think, is that Blairites were more gung-ho about the euro.
Actually, that is mentioned. That is actually
we need to bring that shit in, But here, Rentoul is almost sounding a bit Brownite when he says, and that stupid dickhead Robert Harris thought that Blair should have introduced the euro.
Speaking of stupid dickheads, here's what Tony Blair declared about himself. He declared that his soul is and always will be that of a rebel. Which
with a cause, which is
the
death
problem.
And destruction.
And it was pointed out to me that Tony Blair had been in a metal band when he was younger, and may have had long hair and
I don't think they were a metal band.
They may not have been a metal band, but they had the...
I think they were like a kind of lame rock band. I think they did Rolling Stones covers and stuff.
No. Bad. I don't dislike Rolling Stones. Proto Britpop. Yeah, I guess kinda.
Oh no, sorry. I thought someone saying Rolling Stones were proto Britpop.
No. Blair's
I guess in a way they were, and they were a British band who was active in the '60s. But no, no, I don't.
It's the same as saying the Beatles are the progenitors of metal. It's not that, okay?
Helter Skelter.
Anyway, here's a dig at a good friend of ours, friend of the stream, Keith Starmer. Labour were 21 points ahead of the Conservatives the week before John Smith's death in May 1994, and 44 points ahead with Blair as leader in January 1995. And yet Keith can't muster a 20-point lead? Outrageous. I think that Keir Starmer should resign, since literally anyone else can achieve these leads, apparently.
Yes.
I'm sorry, the data's there. I'm sorry, man. There it is. No, we don't need a young Blair / SK side by side, because I think someone has already done that on Twitter.
TOS Jack.
Terms of service. What's Jack done to TOS us?
I wasn't even saying anything.
Yeah, I don't know. But it's fine. I guess it's fine. I don't know. I always... Jack as the guest, I imagine, will get this stream banned, and it'll be worth it, because I bet it'll be really fucking funny. So, at least we'll go out like that account that did... Anyway.
Your suffering will be my joy. No.
Yeah. There's a whole thing here where they complain about, civil servants not receiving public scrutiny, and I'm like, aren't you, a journalist? Couldn't you scrutinize civil servants if you chose to spend your time? Chose to spend your time. Also, we got Russia. Russia mentioned. Russia! Hell yeah! We got Stalin even advising Winston Churchill to simply execute his senior civil servants. Which, I mean, I can neither endorse or condemn that statement because I can't tell whether it's good or bad. Should we skip to the Iraq War chapter? Because that's really why we're here.
Yeah. I was going to say, I've got a little bit of a headache, so I was wondering if we could... I don't fancy really a 3-hour one tonight.
That's fine. We'll get to the...
So if we could just do Iraq, if we could do the Iraq War, invade it all over again, then that would be lovely.
Let me find the... Oh, wait. Well, we're way off the start of the Iraq War chapter. Hold on.
My God.
Let's get to Iraq. Give me the Iraq section. No, that's not the Iraq section at all. That still says Foundation Hospitals. You know what? I'm just going to go from the contents page. That makes sense. The Iraq War. We're here, everyone.
Yes!
Hell yeah, here we are. Again, I just mostly highlighted this because it's just a series of really, really funny bits where it's like, afterwards, most British people who expressed an opinion agreed that Tony Blair lied to take the country into an illegal war. Which, like, I don't know, maybe we made that assessment based. Yeah, let's get Tonties going in the chat for the Iraq War section of this. But yeah, maybe there's a reason they believe that. There's also, until the invasion began, it was strongly supported. And it's like, yeah, I wonder whose fault that was. If you tell people these guys are a threat, maybe people will support war.
There's quite a funny bit in that, like, Mad Rentoul blog post I was reading, where he's like complaining about the preponderance of Blair hating in the cinema, because I saw somebody mentioning like films about films in some context, and in the absolutely funny part of Hollywood trivia of that era, the part where the movie Eight-Legged Freaks had to change the name of their movie. I'm not sure what era that they're talking about. Anyway, if we're talking about like the Iraq War era, then he complained. Like, Rentoul gets super mad at James Cameron for saying that Avatar is an attempt to open people's minds to why America went down a path that cost several hundreds of thousands of Iraqi lives. Rentoul saying that assertion is not soundly based. What's he linked to? That fucking... Oh, he links to johnrentoul.independentminds.livejournal.com.
Oh,
no. And Dame Judi Dench is already angry about the Chilcot inquiry. Then he just quotes Judi Dench, and then the piece just stops. Like, he doesn't have a riposte. He thinks what she says is just like, which is just like, I'd like to know where the buck stops. I'd like, when asked if she'd like to see Blair and Bush in court.
Yeah. So they do actually make a small concession here. In seeking to rebalance the assessment of Blair, we accept that George Bush and Blair failed to recognise the significant risk that the invasion could have disastrous consequences. Unfortunately, it's followed up with, however.
Yeah, well, there's the thing is, like, there was no good war. Like, there was not a good version of the Iraq War. So, like, that kind of revisionism is so, like, it's such bullshit for that reason.
They also make the point that different processes would not have produced different outcomes. And my point here is that the process of simply not obeying America's will in foreign policy might have produced a slightly different outcome, at least for Blair. Like,
Yeah. It's that kind of thing, like, oh, what if we still invaded, but it all went differently?
What if we invaded, but it was good? Like...
Well, we chose the path, and that was the way we did it, and it went terribly. And, you know, what if we didn't do it? That would be, like, more... I would say, if we didn't invade Iraq, that's more of a hypothetical situation where it worked out okay than a hypothetical situation where we invaded Iraq differently.
Yeah, so this whole thing is just, basically they go, well, if Britain hadn't joined in the war, America would have invaded anyway. And it's like, yes, that doesn't mean you have to join in the invasion.
Yeah. Well,
they're like, Blair's decision should be seen as like a subsidiary of George W. Bush's decision. I'm like, yes, that's the fucking problem. That was the problem.
Fucking NATO brain. People who are like, oh, well, we've got to follow our allies into it. No, it's like, no, we haven't. We really haven't. Fuck NATO. Fuck Brussels. Fuck Obama every day.
Yeah, so like here's part of why they're like, well, nevertheless, nothing the British government decided would have made much difference to what happened in Iraq, or to the bloodshed that followed the invasion, or to subsequent events such as the rise of the Islamic State across the Iraqi-Syria border. Which, like, and he also describes Islamic terrorism as poorly understood at the time. Which is kind of rich, given that the British state and the American state had funded Islamic terror groups in the Middle East. Like, they weren't so poorly understood that they didn't know where to give the money to. Like, come on. Like, outright, like
Rentoul understands the truth of jihad, of Islamic terrorism, which is that Claire Short is a jihadist.
So, like, here's how. Let me see who's being quoted here. Who's asked to reflect? It's unclear who they're asking to reflect. But here's what they say. This is how they thought about terrorism at the time. If you could knock out Al-Qaeda and Saddam Hussein, things would sort themselves out. That's kind of a weird way to think about that, because I don't understand what Saddam Hussein was meant to have had to do with Al-Qaeda. And this is the thing that they admit, where they're like, we didn't realize Islam was so complicated.
It's a land of contrast.
Yeah, Islam, a land of contrast. Review stream coming soon. No, we're obviously not going to do that. But there's just the whole thing here where they're like, oh, it's not Blair's fault that all of the intelligence sources were wrong. He just did what they said. And I'm like, the British intelligence, famously honest British intelligence, is who he chose to believe. I mean... Yeah. Oh my god. And
lies and sneers.
They actually talk about the whole build up to Iraq. So in case people are much younger than me, so I barely remember it, as you know, even though it was, but from 1998 onwards there was just this ramping up of rhetoric against Iraq. And basically the first thing was that they wanted to do airstrikes on Iraq in 98 because he had used chemical weapons against Kurdish people. So badly that Turkey let Kurdish people into its territory for the first time, probably in its history, voluntarily. So that's how badly Saddam did it. But they say that Blair had made a mistake when he asked the Commons about whether he should intervene, because because it allowed Jeremy Corbyn to vote against the government. That's literally the main thing they noticed. It's the main thing they noticed. It was it allowed Jeremy Corbyn to vote against the government and 23 other MPs. Yeah, but they named Jeremy Corbyn specifically.
His mistake was that he allowed some people to do the right thing in a manner which they would be recognised for later.
Yeah, and basically, Michael Foot, the one other good product of Reading's education system, I didn't go to the same school as him, but he was educated in Reading. Clinton's bombing of Khartoum and the terrorists in Afghanistan was a scandalous misuse of power, and it is improper of the British government to give it support. Yeah, more or less correct. Dunking on Blair, love to see that. We like those two types of dunks. Is this the cursed Rentoul book? You're right. It is.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. They're talking about, I think, Iraq in the 90s, late 90s here, which is Clinton hesitated and Blair pressed him to strike. So Blair is an eager enthusiast for bombing Iraq specifically. Literally.
Yeah, but that's the one that they all think works. So they're actually look, here's our evidence of Blair being a bloodthirsty war fiend. This actually makes him good.
In fact, they talk about Kosovo and Sierra Leone even. And we mentioned it earlier, but Kosovo, which is regularly cited as the gold standard of intervention, was a fucking shit show. And a lot of targets were picked. I've mentioned it earlier, I'll mention it again for people who weren't here when I mentioned it, were picked because of how it would play in the media, bombing targets. So the plan was run a zero-casualty aerial bombardment campaign, and they would pick targets based on what would get the best press, not what would have ended the war quickest, which, if you were going to do it, would maybe have been the ethical way to do it. Not that you can usually intervene ethically, but there you go. That's how I would have done it if I was doing it. And isn't Kosovo run by the mafia now? I think what happened was they got rid of their MPs, conspired to get rid of the sitting prime minister. Then he came back and won an election against all of the other MPs with a huge majority. So,
and he replaced them with the mafia.
Well, I guess so. It must have been the case. I don't know if it's run by the mafia. That's I don't know enough about. Also, they mentioned that Blair is generally regarded as a hero in Sierra Leone and Kosovo, which is true. But at least he's regarded as a hero somewhere, I guess.
I bet even that there's elements of untruth to it. You remember that bit they had in the intro that was just Blair's service combating poverty in Africa or something. I think they genuinely think that everyone in Africa is oh, thank you, Mr. Tony Blair. Thank you for saving my life, doing this for me. And what was it they said about his work in Africa?
It was establishing good governance, something like that. It was
good governance. Yeah.
I don't know. It was a very neo-colonially vibe to it, where he's yes, we will establish this fine government in Africa, this is fine.
Yeah.
And don't mind how the infrastructure is done. It's all fine, actually. Don't look too closely. They do mention him working for Nazarbayev again later, which is quite fun.
Oh,
also,
well, very good.
It's weird how he's talking. Basically, they describe Blair's thing here as like, oh no, we can't rely on the US. Europe must militarize separately from NATO. And I'm like, or at least within NATO. And he found an ally in Jacques Chirac, which again, it's weird how Blair keeps aligning with conservative figures internationally. It's weird how that keeps happening.
Yeah.
Over and over again, he weirdly seems to find common cause with centre-right and right-wing leaders. It's really weird how that happens.
Very odd, yeah.
Yeah, a section about 9/11.
So well.
There's a section about 9/11, of course. And basically, he wrote in his memoir in 2002 that like George W. Bush hadn't come to a decision, but he was pushing for George W. Bush to decide, and that decision was to bomb, obviously. So, like, Blair, in some ways, more enthusiastic warmonger than noted dipshit George W. Bush.
Yeah.
Impressive. It's very, very
gotta
impressive.
hand it to him.
Yeah. Sometimes you gotta say, the man is at the top of his game, and it's usually when he's thinking about bombing.
Yeah.
And also, someone asked how long the book was. It's like 500 pages long, isn't it? Like, it's really... Like, yeah, the thing is, the only bits that are interesting are like the first 90 pages and the last chapter about the Iraq War.
Just under 400 pages, including the index and stuff. I mean, that's comparatively short next to all these ones that I've got behind. Well, not all of them, but...
It just read long, I think, for me. Indeed, it was... there's a whole thing where about the... where Blair was accused of, like, sexing up the dossier, and it's like, well, you know, he believed our ridiculous dipshit intelligence services, who, again, I will point out, are known for lying a lot.
Yeah, but it was wrong when Seamus Milne said that, man. It was bad optics, right? We can't state the obvious flaming fucking truth.
And
but
also,
if they were going to take down Harold
wasn't that
Wilson...
the one time that they actually named the source, like, for a comment?
Yeah. They were like, this is so outrageous that they said our brave boys of the security services can't always be trusted. But we're going to name, you can bet that like Keir Starmer's guy Ben Nunn has said 0 things that have offended the sensibilities of the British establishment, so that they've named him. You know, it's like it's really like it's such like a British pomp and pageantry kind of thing. Like, we'll name you to show how outrageous what you've done is. Like, I think they do that in Parliament as well.
Yeah, they name people to kick them out. Yeah.
Yeah, like Lloyd Russell Boyle, we're naming you for like grabbing the mace or whatever.
All right, guys, are you ready to be owned by facts and logic about the weapons of mass destruction lie? Let's get ready, everyone. I hope you're ready to get owned. To put it more bluntly, if Bush and Blair were dishonest enough to invent the weapons of mass destruction, would they not be dishonest enough to plant some in the deserts of Anbar? Owned. That's it. Over. The left is finished. We must all be pro-war now.
I think he's almost arriving at a good point there. Would they not be? You know, that's a good question, John. I think it's a hashtag accidentally left wing.
Yeah, a little bit. It's facts and logic and accidentally left wing at the same time. A man of many talents, John Rentoul, I have to say. If they really cared, they would have made a false flag. Yeah, basically that is the thing. They're like, yes, we will simply do a false flag.
Yeah, well, you know, nowadays it's all about the true flags.
Yeah,
false flag's not good enough. You're not going to hold up in the post-Red Wall.
Also,
world.
they cite Tony Blair talking about Saddam Hussein having weapons of mass destruction and being worried they'd use it as confirming that his fear of them was genuine. And I'm like, no, there's this thing, John Rentoul, called lying, and there's this other thing called acting. People can do it. I do it sometimes. You know, some of us do highly successful radio plays about Mike Gapes. Like, some of us are able to...
Well, that's not lies. That's straight fact.
Yeah, I'm saying about acting, not...
Yeah. I thought you were gonna say they cite Tony Blair, like what he said, as evidence that there was weapons of mass destruction.
No.
Like it turned actually, various senior people suspected that there were a massive stockpile of weapons of mass destruction. Then it's got like the little number by it, like 12. Then you click 12, and it's like source T Blair.
But there's this whole thing here where they go, oh well, because Tony Blair privately offered his support to Bush, it would have been politically difficult for him to back out. And he was publicly very pro-bombing. And I'm like, well, if he's a political mastermind, surely he could back out of it and stick the landing. Like, if he thought it was wrong, he would use his talents to do the correct thing. And it's just, they act like Tony Blair, uwu small bean prime minister who won a fucking massive landslide. And here's the note where I said, oh yeah, they're just swimming in peace, because they said that Tony Blair's other great hope for his time in office was to advance the peace process between Israel and Palestine, which of course...
what the fuck did he do for that when he was in office?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm missing something. I can't think of anything Blair did to improve the situation in Israel and Palestine.
Yeah, and there's basically they're saying like, oh, it's actually fine that we got rid of Saddam Hussein, because when the Arab Spring came up, Saddam Hussein would simply have just done what Bashar al-Assad did in Syria, and therefore it would have been worse. And I'm like, but you don't know that for sure, and also, ISIS fucking happened, and they almost took half the fucking country really easily, because the Iraqi army just walked away. They saw ISIS coming and were like, I guess we're done, you know?
That's incredibly stupid, yeah. Really dumb stuff.
Really poor logic. Like, you would not pass first-year logic modules with that. And also, here's the thing. Here's a sentence that pissed me the fuck off. I'm going to read it now. However, not even cabinet ministers could have been expected to know enough about Iraq to be able to judge the likely effects of invasion. And if they could not, other MPs... Hold on.
What are they all in fucking Labour Friends of Iraq pro-war pressure group for then if they don't know anything Iraq? I guess it's a pro-war pressure group, not a group for people with an actual interest in Iraqi politics.
Here's the thing that pissed me off more. And if they could not, other MPs and members of the public certainly could not have been expected to do so. But the problem is, members of the public knew. They went out and protested in massive fucking numbers because they're like, what is this fucking nonsense you're talking about? Like, come on. Like, if random dipshits in the street can work it out, my guess is, and by the way, lots of MPs voted against it. Not just Labour MPs, other MPs voted against it. They figured it out. Yeah. Why is Tony Blair and the Conservative frontbench so apparently exempt from knowing things? Like, why do they have license to be fucking idiots? I don't know.
Yeah, but on the other hand, you know, it wasn't a conspiracy, okay? There was nothing underhand going on. They were just idiots. So you can't call them idiots, but also there wasn't anything malicious going on. They're just idiots.
Yeah. There's also this thing here. It's a quote from Ed Balls. So we're getting out the big guns here. The big guns here. The important thing about Iraq to remember is how people feel now about Iraq. It's very different from how they were feeling at the time. Yeah, basically. So, like, by the way, not a lot of the general public. And then there's the thing is, the truth is, Tony Blair was saying, this is what I've seen and what I've been doing. And most people said, okay, in cabinet.
There was one poll at the time that showed the public supporting the Iraq war, and the Blairites will never shut the fuck up about it. Every other poll showed that there was a sizable to enormous majority for anti-war sentiment.
And also, Ed Balls is like describing cabinet where, like, oh, Tony Blair would show up, say what he was doing, and everyone would be like, okay. Doesn't that imply that system's fucking shit? Like, if Tony Blair can walk in and be like, so here's the thing, we're bombing Iraq, and everyone goes, yeah, okay, that's fine, Tony, let's go, let's do it.
Well, it shows what weak fucking cucks they were, what just, like, shitty, like, principleless hacks every person in that room was.
Yeah, and they're talking about here, like, oh, there is no court that could try a decision such as that to invade Iraq, and I'm like, maybe we should make that court. Like, maybe we should make that court, like...
Yeah, well, I guess the International Criminal Court is not big enough for a titan like Blair. It's only fit for lowly African leaders.
And yeah, so here's the thing, and some people, so he's doing a straw man here, but some might wish that the UK government would never take part in military action without current and explicit authorization by the UN Security Council. But but they would have to accept that this would give Russia, China, and France a veto over the use of British force. Like, not in self-defense, first of all, because obviously then you would act to defend. But also, why are you including France in there? Like, France is some great strategic opponent of the UK. Like, France are going to be like, yeah, we're not aligned with France. Famously, Britain and France, not in the same military bloc, never aligned with each other. Like,
I mean, I guess there is a little bit of a history of us fighting wars against Germany, but it's the same thing as he was, like, in those blog posts, like, the Germans are f***ing this Blair-hating film!
Hell yeah.
I see FFF is asking in the chat, are there any Blairites who support Blair's domestic policies but think the Iraq war was bad? No,
I don't think so.
They all pretend to, but no, they actually both support his neoliberal domestic policies, probably think that the half-decent ones caused the global economic crisis, and support the Iraq war and war crimes more generally.
Yeah, that's the soft left. We did a whole, me and John Duncan did a whole stream where we reviewed their foreign policy pamphlet, which was just, this is this, basically. But sure start, yes.
Yeah, open Labour. Sorry, I mean Labour Gates.
Labour Games. Okay, so there's a section here that fucking confused the shit out of me. When Kofi Annan, UN Secretary General, described the Iraq invasion as not in conformity with the UN Charter, it could just as well have been argued that it was not in conformity with the UN Charter. Like, first of all, fucking I get the feeling Kofi Annan knows more about this shit than fucking John Rentoul.
Rentoul's been around longer, to be fair. Obviously, as a Transylvanian living in Britain, he does have extensive international experience. But yes, you're right. I think Kofi Annan probably does know a bit more.
John Rentoul is more familiar with the millet system of the Ottoman Empire than he is with the UN laws, I hear. Sources inform me. He's also much more familiar with the jizya tax.
He's like, what, bro? No, what do you mean? It's totally legal to impale people on stakes in a wartime situation.
Excuse me, I think you'll find that I own the land and the peasants tied to it. What are you talking about? But yeah, advocates of rules-based international relations ought to at least welcome the processes in UK government now, because it pays attention to legal advice. But the thing is, he's complaining about the prospect of Britain obeying the fucking rules when he talks about, UN authorization. He's complaining, and then in the previous paragraph said, no, actually, I disagree with the rules. Just say you disagree with the fucking rules, then. Don't... Christ, man. Like, just absolutely outrageous stupidity. Anyway, I think we've more or less hit the conclusion, and there wasn't much here. Also, there is one thing here that I always say, which was they obviously are unhappy about the time David Cameron lost his vote in 2013 to intervene in Syria, which, it's worth noting, that would have put us on the same side of the conflict as ISIS. So David Cameron wanted to intervene on the side of ISIS in 2013 because, guess what? People didn't understand how fucking complicated a region was like they did when we were going into Iraq. It turns out we keep making this fucking mistake.
It's such a shame that David Cameron couldn't follow the example of the international brigades by intervening against not ISIS. I had something to say, but people walking in and out.
Oh yeah, there was a whole thing here where basically they're like, oh no, Blair should only be judged by his intentions, not by the outcomes, just by his intentions. And it's very BoJack Horseman, like, I would like to be judged by my intentions this time. It's like, no, you did the bad thing. Like, you get judged by the results, I'm afraid.
I'm just a soul whose intentions are good.
Also,
oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood.
I'll sign this off here. I'll sign off at least the book portion of this because I'm fed up with the book. with this bit from the conclusion. Will posterity see him as brilliant? Probably. Will it see him as tricky? Also likely. But will the overall verdict be positive or negative? We're not sure. Which is just such a great, like, centrist moment. We're like, I don't know whether it's good or bad. Who can say?
Yeah. A land of contrasts. Politics, what a concept, folks.
Yeah, like, who can say? Who can say? It's just outrageously funny, that ending, I think.
I know I specifically said I want to, like, wrap up sooner than later, but you know who's a funny Blairite?
Yeah.
Eddie Marston.
Oh, no.
Did you talk about his latest tweet on your stream yet?
No, wait, what was the latest tweet? Let's go. Let's do
a bit sorry, I didn't mean the latest one today, like, you know, the classic one the other day.
No, it might have slipped my mind.
Centrist dinner parties.
Yes, I have seen that one. Fucking hell.
That's so funny, man. Can we, like, tell people, just while I'm here, I want to give people a Marston update, because I, like, follow his career religiously.
Hell yeah, let's do it.
And by his career, I mean his tweets. I mean his career as a poster, which is the wildest shit. Like I was saying, that someone should do like a Nicolas Cage style Eddie Marston freakouts compilation on YouTube, but it's just him at his computer at home rather than any footage from any of his films. What is the fucking classic Eddie Marston tweet?
But yeah. While Jack's getting that up, I will just say, you should follow the stream if you've enjoyed this, because I do this sort of thing at least once every 2 weeks. Also, tomorrow, we've got the first Sword of Bravos coming on the stream, while I play some Hellish Court. We've got, like, actual legit person who's been on TV coming on the... Well, I guess Eleanor's been on the TV as well, but person who's been in a very famous TV show coming on the stream to talk about swords and politics.
That's awesome, yeah.
And Miros is going to be here as well. So
I've never seen Game of Thrones, but I've possibly seen him in something else.
Yeah.
But I like his tweets anyway.
Yeah, he tweets good, which is why he's coming on the stream.
I like his posts, and he's famous, so good for you, man.
And also because Discord behaved itself tonight, I'm going to be doing it on Discord, and I can't wait for that decision to bite me. But yeah, so yeah, not tomorrow's Marsden appearance. We've had Eddie Marsden on the stream. If you'll recall, we had Jack on the stream as well.
in video game form, indeed. Yeah. Where is this shit? God damn it!
But yeah, definitely do follow.
Found it.
If you want to hear me nerd out about swords. All right, what is it? Let's go. Let's hit us with the post.
God, I really miss centrist dinner parties. Just good food, great conversation, no flags, no moral certainty, and no anti-Semitism.
Oh my fucking god, man.
Like, it's so good on so many levels.
It's
like
such a powerful tweet.
Like Eddie Marston tweet. It's just like, he's so aspirational. If you know what I mean. Like, he's never been able to get, like, this chip off his shoulder that I think he comes from a working class background originally, and he really feels that, like, he has personally earned the fact that he now lives a comfortable upper middle class life. Like, so profoundly does he feel that he has made good for himself, and this is solely down to personal virtue, that he's like completely built up a worldview around the fact that he basically deserves to be invited to middle class dinner parties and be like part of the chattering classes.
Oh, getting some Brendan terminology in on the stream as well. And also, yeah, said man who worked with Mel Gibson, which, yeah...
no anti-Semitism. It's just so funny. It's also like no moral certainty. Like, are you so certain that anti-Semitism is not moral then? What if anti-Semitism is actually good? Because you can never be too sure about these things, you know? No moral certainty, apart from, like, Jeremy Corbyn shows up and he's like, oh no, I heard what that taxi driver said, what that I imagined that I in my head thought was also you.
Yeah, oh my god, yeah, that was insane.
It's such a ridiculous man. I love it. But yeah, that's the whole thing about Eddie Marsan, is just like there's this huge gulf between like how stupid he is, which has nothing to do with like the fact that he's like not had like a like Oxbridge education or whatever. Like he's just a really stupid man, and he would be like he's like an autodidact. He reads like, well, if not books, like opinion columns that are like,
he's read 10,000 posts.
10,000 Matthew Dancona pieces in The Guardian, which are like, well, you know, the Corbynites didn't realise that they needed to adjust to the fast-changing global economy. And then he gets interviewed about whatever stupid film he's done, and he's just like, well, you know, I'd always had a problem with extremists because they can't adjust to the fast-changing global economy. And he just, like, regurgitates these melt talking points.
Oh my god. He's a good actor because he's so stupid he thinks everything in the film is happening for real, which is very grim if you know some of his roles.
Yeah. He's like, I get to really be Himmler. Oh my god! Like, yeah, but I think he is quite a good actor. You know, he's just like a ridiculous man, and I just get fascinated by him because he's like objectively a person who is in like a higher up strata of society. He's wealthy. He's quite famous. He's like comfortable. He's still quite well regarded by people, despite the way he carries on Twitter. Like, you know, the Guardian's not going to pass up giving him a new interview where he can drop gems like, "My kid asked me, Daddy, why do you always have to be a pedo?" Like, he's still going to get those opportunities and shit. Like, get invited to Lib Dem conference, but at the same time, because he just so fucking desperately wants people like Raphael Bear to think he's really clever. He's just one of the most pathetic people in the world. And that's another, again, like this gulf between his material comfort and his just utter like downtroddenness. You know, that's like, I guess that this is how he gets typecast in films, but he just comes across as just pathetic, just pitiable. This man, like, who has more money in the bank than most of us probably ever will. Just a really laughable figure. And yeah, it all comes down to just his pure, like, not just the fact that he's so stupid and wants to be so clever and seen by the people he views as clever as so clever, but just to the fact that also we have a society that we live in a society, as the Joker would say in Zack Snyder's Avengers, the other what I know what
whatever the other one is, I don't know. Yeah.
I was actually like looking into these stupid films earlier, and it's really funny actually how the Avengers has like 500 people you've heard of in it, and then the DC has like 10% of that. Like, I mean, I don't think it's good to like cast so many people and take up like loads of their career, so they can't film other projects, although obviously it's their own fault, and then give them like 2 seconds of screen time or anything. So the DC method is probably better. But anyway, that made me laugh.
Yeah.
But before I said about the Joker, the Joker thing, we live in a society. It's just we live in a society that has told this like ridiculous man making a fool of himself on Twitter that he is actually like a courageous fighter for freedom, and like giving him a showcase where he gets to play his favorite radio DJ, albeit as a rapist and murderer.
Oh my god. Anyway, before we go, actually, Jack, do you want to tell people where everyone can find you?
Yeah, follow me at RP Core Intel, the RPCORPINTL, which is the current home of both Reel Politik and like my personal tweets about like Bob Dylan shit. Yeah, find Reel Politik on SoundCloud at mikegapes.co.uk. Follow us on Patreon at patreon.com/realpolitik, and go on playlists to find the complete Gapecast back catalogue, as well as another playlist of our collaborations with Sinan on this very stream. And is there anything else I wanted?
I'll be sending the audio for this one soon, so it will be there again shortly.
Hell yeah.
And also,
check out...
I still find it so funny that you got mikegapes.co.uk.
Yeah, it's great, and it's dirt cheap as well, so we can keep it, like, it's not too much of a strain to maintain. But whereas mikegapes.com is like thousands of pounds, because presumably loads of pornographic film production companies want mikegapes.com. But yeah, I was going to say I do stuff with New Socialist as well, and should have a new piece with them coming out next month. So check New Socialist out. Subscribe to the Patreon as well, because New Socialist needs supporters. My band, of which I'm the only member, Crazy Moose, will be releasing our third album soon, which actually does, for the first time, feature contributions by somebody else on one track, as well as artwork by my co-host Yair. And also, just because I'm really excited about these two things, I'm doing two Neil Young-related things, one of which is me and my friend Emmett have put together a big mega playlist of Neil cuts for Bellamy Radio, which will be out in about 2 weeks, which I can't wait for people to hear. Secondly, I am discussing Neil Young's hilarious, pretty shoddy anti-Iraq war / concert movie documentary CSNY Deja Vu on one of my very favorite podcasts, the Canadian Legends Michael and Us, this weekend. So I'm very excited for that. Although it's a consequence of my good Canadian comrade Luke Savage still recovering from an operation. So get well soon, Luke, but for some reason you're listening to this.
If for some reason you're listening or watching this stream. Miros is about to go live, so I'm going to wait for him to go live, because he's going to be my co-host for tomorrow's big stream with the famous Game of Thrones actor who's coming on.
Gape of Thrones.
Ask
him if he's heard of Mike Gapes.
Yes, we're going to ask, obviously. He dunked on West Streeting,
nice.
We're going to ask about Gapes, obviously. But also, I was going to make a sub-mod for the Crusader Kings 3 Game of Thrones mod that's coming out called Gapes of Thrones, where every character is replaced by Mike Gapes, but different aspects of his personality. So we're gonna be seeing that soon.
That was funny when Mike Gapes was like, "Google my name" to that troll, and it's just like, what, to fucking laugh at it even more?
Like, come on, man, your name's a sentence.
Google Mike Gapes, and people are like, whoa, my ISP is blocking this for being too obscene.
Hold on, let me get Miros. Let's get the raid going on him. Hey, okay, we're going to go raid my good mate, and he will be my co-host tomorrow for the big Miltos stream, and also my opponent in all of the sword fighting. So if you want to hear me talk about swords, come tomorrow at 6. Otherwise, it's good night from me. See you, folks.
Top stuff. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and thanks for having me, Sinan. I'm sorry I didn't read the book.
That's fine. We'll do it next time with the both of us reading. All right, good night, folks.
Yeah. See you later. Peace out. Cool, man. I think